American Comics, Saiyan powers shock Spider-Gwen and the universe. Episode 101, Super Saiyan at full power, Ghost Rider appears. Pierce finally agreed. In the entire Marvel movie universe, there are only 3 true artificial intelligences. The first one is definitely Ultron, who caused the Omnic Crisis, and the second one is also from the same origin as him, Vision. They all draw on the power of Mind Gem. The third and least known artificial intelligence is Dr. Zora of Hydra. Zola is a super scientist who is not inferior to Howard Stark. He helped Schmidt, the leader of Hydra during World War II, develop the Tesseract and create energy weapons. Later, after Hydra was defeated, Zola was recruited by SHIELD and became an employee of S.H.I.E.L.D. But he still helped Hydra secretly. Before his death, he even uploaded his memory and thinking patterns to the computer, becoming an alternative artificial intelligence. Only these 3 special cases can be called artificial intelligence, while Jarvis, Friday, and Sun Wuming's Red Queen, Xuanli, are nothing more than pseudo-intelligence with relatively powerful core algorithms. Sun Wuming wanted to use Zora's source code this time, to see if he could promote the evolution of the Red Queen. As for the Mind Gem, as long as the gem was still in Blue Star, it was no different than being in his pocket. Whenever you need it, you can get it back immediately. It's a surefire deal. 2 days later, Pierce came back with Dr. Zola's source code. Sun Wuming first asked Red Queen to test it, and found that there was no problem, and gave him the psychic scepter. Mr. Sun, I will return the scepter with both hands in 3 years. After Pierce got the scepter, his face was also full of joy. He said a few polite words and left 790. After walking far away and almost returning to SHIELD, Sitwell asked in a low voice, Chief, do we really want to return scepter? Why not? Pierce closed his eyes and chuckled. If you don't come up with anything after 3 years of research, you will naturally give it back. But once we have the power to check and balance, or even kill Sun Wuming, then who will we give it back to? Sitwell understood immediately and quickly flattered him. The leader is wise. Red Queen, screen Zola's source code. The lowest level logic is set to always obey my orders and selectively integrate. Master, please rest assured that the Red Queen will always be your most loyal housekeeper. I hope you don't imitate the guy next door. Sun Wuming spoke with sincerity, just like educating his own daughter. Don't add so many messy thoughts to yourself, all you need is to serve me better. The underlying code of Red Queen has been updated again and linked to the entire internet to search for definitions of clothing in various countries around the world. And Sun Wuming was completely unaware of all this. 3 months later. In the mirror space, Sun Wuming closed his eyes tightly and stood in the void. Suddenly he opened his eyes, sharp as a knife, golden air flow spread all over his body, and he entered the Super Saiyan state in an instant. Subsequently, Sun Wuming's aura instantly fell from its peak, and the golden aura around him did not shrink. In the end, only the last thin layer was left. He shook his head dissatisfied. Is this the last step still missing? It's a little too delayed. During this time, Sun Wuming has been doing special training for the Super Saiyan transformation. First of all, the threshold for transforming into a Super Saiyan must be lowered and the speed of transformation must be increased. Secondly, it is to normalize the Super Saiyan level 1 transformation. The sudden surge in power is 50 times greater. If you don't become familiar with such a sudden increase in power, it will be impossible to exert its full power in battle. What's more, after the transformation, the bellicosity and anger that constantly appear in the heart also affect the combat performance. The direction Sun Wuming has chosen is what Kakarot calls the path of full Super Saiyan power. After the transformation, he must be the same as before the transformation, not being influenced by emotions, being able to use every ounce of his body force. When the golden flame is completely hidden and only the hair and eyebrows and other transformation features are retained, the practice will be considered successful. At the same time, you can also start studying the transformation of level 1. After several more attempts, Sun Wuming still failed. He ended today's practice and returned home. Gwen hasn't come back yet, and Lorna is the only one at home, busy in the kitchen. Lorna, who was born in an orphanage, has been living independently since she was very young. Cooking is a piece of cake for her. The only troublesome thing is that Sun Wuming eats so much that no matter how much she cooks, she can't fill his stomach. You are back. You can eat after Sister Gwen comes back later. Seeing Sun Wuming coming back, Lorna said hello and continued busy. All the pots and pans in the house were made of metal, and they started to move on their own without her touching them. After a while, Gwen came back after finishing her class. The 3 of them ate dinner like a family, and the smile on Lorna's face never broke. She had always dreamed of living in a loving family, and Gwen and Sun Wuming now gave her such a feeling. Even George and Helen took good care of her. Halfway through the meal, Gwen suddenly said, Wuming, I think Lorna doesn't go to the company often these days. How about letting her go to school? She is only 16 years old. She should at least finish high school before deciding whether to continue studying in the future. Sun Wuming nodded indifferently. It depends on what she wants. If she wants to go to school, I'll call Zhongqing High School. No, Sister Gwen, I think it's fine now. Lorna said quickly. She had no interest in going to school. Now, in addition to cooking every day, she also goes to the company to help out from time to time. The rest of the time she was very free and could do whatever she wanted. That's not possible, you have to go to high school. Gwen showed off her parents' pretensions, and Lorna looked at Sun Wuming for help. Facing the serious Gwen, Sun Wuming said that he was helpless and that women had the final say in the small matters in the family. Lorna glared at him angrily and could only accept Gwen's proposal pitifully. After dinner, Sun Wuming took out his cell phone and was about to call the money-grubbing principal to arrange Lorna's enrollment. The old man was really greedy, but he really did what he needed to do. However, before the call was dialed, a familiar number called first. Sun Wuming was a little surprised, but still answered the call without hesitation. Hey, John, it's rare that you still remember my phone number. On the other end of the phone was the retired killer, John Wick. Sun Wuming and John had not been in contact for a while since they parted ways at the Longzhou Technology dinner. Sorry Wuming, I may need to trouble you this time, something strange happened here. The teasing on Sun Wuming's face disappeared and he said in a deep voice, then let's talk to each other face to face. I'll go over now. After hanging up the phone, Sun Wuming spoke to Gwen, raised his sword pointer between his eyebrows, found John's location and teleported over. Where are you? Sun Wuming looked at the surrounding environment. It seemed to be a safe house. John's condition at the moment was not very good. There was a lot of dirt and dust on his body, and his arm was injured. It looked like a burn. Texas, John finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Sun Wuming suddenly appear. He staggered 2 steps and sat on a chair nearby, his voice full of fatigue. I came here after leaving New York and rented a farm. It was fine before, but just a few days ago. John Wick began to tell his story. A week ago, there were a series of missing cases in Texas, and these missing people all had one thing in common: they were all gangsters or criminals. At first, John Wick didn't care. This kind of thing was too common in the United States, and homeless people froze to death and starved to death on the streets every day. Especially in Texas, a place where American-style mariachis happen whenever they disagree, losing someone is hardly news at all. But until 2 days ago, John went to an old friend from the dark world and asked him to help repair the tractor, which happened to hit 10 skeletons covered in electric fire grabbing his friend. Within 2 seconds, his friend was reduced to ashes by the flames. Immediately afterwards, the flaming skeleton stared at him and shouted, "You are guilty." Throwing off the chains. When John fired all the bullets in the gun without causing any damage to the opponent, he knew he was in trouble. He has been on the run for the past 2 days. Every day during the day, the skeleton will disappear, but will reappear at night, chasing after him on a motorcycle covered in flames. After 2 days of escaping, it was found to be useless, so John had no choice but to call Sun Wuming for help. It is already dusk in Texas. In less than 2 hours, that guy will inevitably appear, but he can no longer run. After listening to John's story, Sun Wuming almost instantly determined who the skeletal monster he was talking about was. Ghost Rider. And he's riding a motorcycle, so he's probably Johnny Blazer. He has an immortal body and can control hellfire. When he encounters a guilty enemy, he can burn his soul by looking at him with the eye of judgment for 2 seconds. Ghost Rider is pretty strong. The origin of Ghost Rider is very complicated, with several versions and even several elemental lords involved. But one thing in common is that Ghost Rider consists of 2 main elements, the spirit of vengeance and the host. As long as the spirit of revenge exists, the host will not die. As for why he targeted John Wick, Sun Wuming also understood very well. Ghost Rider does not kill innocent people, well, except for a certain lizard. Someone like John, with hundreds of lives on his hands, is just like a big fat sheep. After figuring out the situation, Sun Wuming relaxed. This is easy to handle. He took out a fairy bean and handed it to John to eat. A few seconds later, John was shocked to find that all his injuries had recovered and he was still full of strength. Don't worry, let's go have a drink first and wait. John nodded, I'll pay for it. There's a bar nearby that sells good rum. He has 100% trust in Sun Wuming. He has seen this guy show off his power. If Sun Wuming can't protect him, then he might as well not even think about living. The two came to the bar, and Sun Wuming had a glass of orange juice as usual. Under the strange look in the bartender's eyes, he was a little out of place with the crowd around him. John smiled bitterly. Sun Wuming's hobbies have not changed after all this time. He ordered a glass of rum and a glass of sherry, and tasted them slowly. By the time Sun Wuming finished his 5th steak, the sky was completely dark. After finishing the last piece slowly, Sun Wuming wiped his mouth and said, "Let's go, it's almost time." John was in a small town in Texas. He and Sun Wuming left the lively area of the bar, and the surroundings soon became silent. The two of them walked towards the outside of the city. After only 10 minutes, they heard the roar of a motorcycle engine behind them. Sun Wuming looked back at Ghost Rider. He didn't comment on the skull. Everyone's head looked like this. The leather jacket was quite resistant to burning, and the motorcycle was handsome, but he still thought the skeleton horse was more handsome. 2.2. Sin should be purged. Ghost Rider is also ruthless and doesn't say much. He directly throws out the chains burning with hellfire, covering both Sun Wuming and John within the attack range. Bang! Sun Wuming raised his hand and fired a Qigong wave, knocking Ghost Rider's chains away, then stepped in front of him and kicked him. There was a clear sound of bones breaking, and Ghost Rider's chest was visibly dented, but it quickly returned to its original state. He previously commented that Ghost Rider's strength was pretty good, but that was only for ordinary people. For Sun Wuming now, the only difficulty is his regenerative healing factor, but it's not that there is no way to solve it. However, he had some questions that he wanted to ask Johnny Blaze, so he didn't do anything harsh. "Look into my eyes." Taking advantage of the opportunity to get close, Ghost Rider firmly grasped Sun Wuming's shoulders with both hands, forcing him to look at him. The power of the Eye of Judgment surged out, measuring Sun Wuming's crime. "You are guilty." Ghost Rider said word by word. He saw the people Sun Wuming killed when he was a killer, and saw the Kimura family that was completely wiped out by his turtle-style Qigong. Saw the United States soldiers who were killed during the Hulk Abomination incident. Saw it. Boom. Ghost Rider's empty pupils were filled with flames. He let go of Sun Wuming and staggered back a few steps. He saw it. An entire blue star population died in his battle with a purple-skinned person. What a heinous evil. Episode 102, Hell Lord Mephisto, the corruption of the Holy Spirit is the most deplorable. The spirit of vengeance in Johnny Blaze was a little confused. After so many years of working in the industry, from ancient times to modern society, he has tried not only 10,000 but also 8,000 beings. Among them, there are battlefield butchers who have killed more than 10,000 people, and there are also criminal gangsters. But never like the man in front of me, who actually wiped out the entire human race. So much so that the spirit of vengeance, which had always been instinctive to judge, was startled. What followed was intense excitement. Extremely evil man. Accept my judgment. The flames in Ghost Rider's eyes became more intense, turning from red to blue, and he pounced on him again. The spirit of vengeance becomes stronger when it encounters a strong one, and the souls of all those who are guilty will be burned by it. Sun Wuming still had no intention of evading and allowed Ghost Rider to use Eye of Judgment. A fierce flame emerged from his body, and was quickly squeezed out by Ben Nei's huge energy. Ghost Rider, impossible. Why are you okay? Who said I'm fine? Didn't you see that I was already dead? Sun Wuming pointed to the fire around him, a little disappointed. I thought there was something special about the fire of hell, but it turned out to be just dimensional energy. John Wick, who was watching the show on the side, spread his hands helplessly. He became a toy here at Sun Wuming after being touched by the flames that almost killed him. He was extremely glad that he had found foreign aid, and was shocked when he saw Ghost Rider's skull face. John said he felt comfortable. Eye of Judgment. Penalty. Burn the souls of those in front of you. Revenge. Fire. No matter how much Ghost Rider roared, his flames could not get even half an inch closer to Sun Wuming. Gabba. With a slight brain collapse, Ghost Rider's skull shattered into powder, but it quickly grew back. I am immortal. Ghost Rider roared and threw out the chain, trying to tear Sun Wuming into pieces, but was caught in his hand. You are indeed immortal, but it does not mean that the host is immortal. 12-inch Sun Wuming said softly. He raised his arm and bloomed with endless light. Sun Fist. The dazzling white light illuminated the entire sky like daylight. When the residents of the town saw this scene, they ran out of their homes to enjoy the spectacle. Eh? Are you okay? Sun Wuming was a little surprised. Didn't it say that Ghost Rider would retreat into the host's body as long as it was exposed to light? Why was it ineffective? What about this? He opened a teleportation gate, and the opposite side was connected to the Dragon Kingdom. The time there was exactly 7 o'clock in the morning, the red sun was rising, and wisps of morning light shone in through the teleportation gate. Ghost Rider roared and gradually returned to Johnny Blaze's appearance. This is actually a human being? John was surprised. He had always thought that the skull that was chasing him had escaped from hell. Well, he is the host of the Spirit of Vengeance, so essentially they are two people. Sun Wuming nodded and looked at Johnny Blaze, who looked in pain. Ghost Rider won't die, but that doesn't mean it won't hurt. He had just broken Johnny's skull several times, and the heartbreaking pain was still tormenting him. It took a long time before he finally recovered. Are you, a Saiyan? Johnny looked at Sun Wuming and exclaimed after recognizing his identity. Although there are very few scenes of the New York battle against Sun Wuming, his image of doing great things when he appears has already been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. It will be easier if you know me. I have something to ask you, okay? Johnny nodded. Sun Wuming looked at it and felt that it would be troublesome to keep the portal open, so he simply walked over. John and Johnny followed. Before Sun Wuming could ask any questions, Johnny spoke first. Did you really kill so many people? The memories of the spirit of revenge and the host are shared. What the Eye of Judgment just saw, Johnny naturally also saw it. The first ones are actually nothing, but in the end, are you referring to the time when Blue Star was destroyed? I did indeed do it. Just as cold sweat broke out on Johnny's forehead, Sun Wuming smiled and said, the purpose of that purple sweet potato spirit is to destroy the entire universe. In order to defeat him, I can only sacrifice the Blue Star humans first. But later they were all resurrected. Destroying Blue Star is completely normal for Saiyans, so Sun Wuming has nothing to hide. It's not like they're all dead. That's good. Johnny felt much relieved and said that Sun Wuming didn't look like such a crazy person. The judgment method of the spirit of vengeance is different from that of humans. In their eyes, killing is a sin. No matter what the reason is, no matter whether the other person should be killed or not, you still have to control this power as soon as possible. Vengeful spirits cannot be killed because they have not only been commanded by God, but also cursed by the devil, and their existence is extremely special. The best way to suppress them is to let this human body, the host, control their power and not make extreme punishments. I can't control his actions at all. Johnny smiled bitterly. Every time I transform, I have to endure the pain of my flesh and blood being burned. How long have you been a Ghost Rider? Sun Wuming asked. Half a month's time. Is it Mephisto? Sun Wuming asked again. Johnny's expression suddenly changed. Do you know him? Other than him, no one can make Ghost Rider now. Sun Wuming paused. What does he want you to do? Johnny's eyes showed resentment. Mephisto asked me to kill his son and 3 of his men to get the Saint Fanyansa contract. But the inner demon kidnapped my girlfriend and asked me to exchange it for the Saint Fanyansa contract. Mr. Saiyan. Johnny's eyes were full of begging. I need your help, please. Sun Wuming did not answer immediately, but closed his eyes and contacted Ancient One. Sir, Mephisto has come to Blue Star, do you know? The Ancient One who was fishing suddenly opened his eyes. The 3 holy places didn't notice it at all. How did you find it? He made a Ghost Rider. I see. A flash of understanding flashed in Ancient One's eyes. Mephisto is the most active Latitude Lord, and his coveting of Blue Star is no worse than Dormammu. This time he came through duplication, so he was able to bypass the monitoring of Holy Place. It's not a big deal. But if you meet him, just send him away. 5 pounds of ancient tea. Sun Wuming climbed up the pole, trying to get some benefits. You brat, okay, I'll give it to you next time I come to Kamartaj. The Ancient One laughed and scolded, cutting off the contact between the two. There was a sharp look in his eyes. It's no secret that she wants to retire, but before this person leaves, these Latitude Lords can't sit still. Do you really think she is made of clay? The other sighed. After receiving the benefits, Sun Wuming couldn't help but smile. Johnny, I will help you deal with Mephisto and the Witch Heart Demon, but the most important thing now is to get them to show up on their own initiative. Sun Wuming used his breath sensor just now, but he didn't notice any strong or special breath. These devils should have their own way of hiding. I have a solution. Hearing Sun Wuming's promise, Johnny was overjoyed and said eagerly, I know where the Saint Fanyansa contract is buried. As long as I get it, the inner demon and Fisto will definitely show up. Saiyan, please. Don't worry yet. Sun Wuming quickly grabbed Johnny, who was about to go through the portal back to Texas. The most important thing now is to give you special training. What special training? Johnny Blaze looked confused. A few hours later, he fully understood the meaning of Sun Wuming's special training. Johnny Blaze spent the whole night transforming and restoring his human form. He experienced the pain of the flames burning his body to ashes for many times on the job. If he can't control the spirit of revenge in his body, let alone deal with the Witch Heart Demon and Mephisto, as soon as he returns to Texas and becomes Ghost Rider, he will attack Sun Wuming like crazy. Time is limited. Sun Wuming doesn't want to waste time with Johnny here, so he can only use this quick method. Although it hurts a little bit, the effect is pretty good. Now in the evil spirit state, Johnny can already control his body with his own consciousness and will not attack Sun Wuming rashly. And now, there are only 2 hours left before the sun rises. Is it okay now? Johnny asked Sun Wuming with twitching corners of his mouth. He was relieved until he nodded. It really hurts so much. Where is the deed of Saint Fangyansa? Is there an address? Johnny quickly told the address of a cemetery, and Sun Wuming opened the portal and walked over with John and him. The cemetery at night was a bit eerie, but the three of them were indifferent to such an environment. Johnny came directly to a tombstone with the words Carter Shirey engraved on it. I knew you'd come back, Skull. An old man stood in front of the wooden house, holding a shovel and looking at Sun Wuming and John. Are they the helpers you are looking for? They look very difficult to deal with. Where's the contract? I need him. Johnny asked. When the old man didn't answer, he could only say an apology in his heart and prepare to turn the cemetery upside down. Not here, kid. The old man stopped him, picked up the shovel, and slammed it on the ground. From the break of the handle, a sheepskin scroll fell out. Sun Wuming suddenly asked, why does Mephisto want this contract so much? The old man looked at him deeply, took 2 steps back unconsciously, and then slowly explained. Fangyansa is a village 500 miles away. Hundreds of years ago, there were thousands of villagers living there. Because they were all devout believers in God, they were also called Saint Fangyansa. The funny thing is that the person who founded the village was not a fanatical believer in God, but the devil, Mephisto. He spent several generations turning the people in the village into figures like saints, making their souls extremely pure. Finally, through conspiracy, he degenerated everyone into evil spirits. The old man shook his head sadly. The fall of holiness is the most deplorable, but the power it brings is also huge amounts of. Although there are only 1,000 souls, the quality of these souls is comparable to hundreds of millions of ordinary people. Once they are obtained, Mephisto's power will also increase greatly. Fortunately, the previous generation Ghost Rider saw through his conspiracy and sealed all his souls in the Saint Gonza contract, preventing Mephisto from succeeding. After telling the past story, the old man gave Johnny 23. Anyone who sells his soul for love has the power to change the world. I believe in you. Johnny put the scroll away solemnly. I will prevent the disaster from happening. Even if I can't, there will be Mr. Wuming. The old man smiled and said, then let me send you on your last journey. Johnny looked at the endless night sky and said with some pain, it's too dangerous. This is not the place to go. An outing, but a battle with the devil. Carter did not speak, but whistled, and a horse ran up to him neighing. Then, the flames rose up, and the fire of hell emerged from Carter and the horse. Johnny said blankly, Carter Shirey. Fake, I like this man, he's so cool. John murmured to himself. He looked at Sun Wuming, and then at the 2 flaming skulls. Instantly fell into self-isolation. He is just an ordinary person with feelings. Santa Fangyansa. The witch heart demon and his only remaining subordinate, the water demon, were waiting for the arrival of the Ghost Rider in the village church. 10 minutes later, the roar of the locomotive and the roar of the war horses reached his ears. He looked at the 2 people walking towards him and smiled. Is there still a Ghost Rider in the world? It's really strange. Don't transform, otherwise she will be dead. Johnny walked not far from the witch heart demon and took out the scroll. Let her go first. Wu Xinma smiled slightly, glanced at the woman beside him, and Fu threw it aside without caring. Just when he was about to reach for the scroll, Johnny suddenly transformed and hit the devil in the face hard. Carter Slay also entered the evil riding state, took out his shotgun and hit the water devil. On the body. The battle between the devil and the night begins. The witch heart demon was punched and unhurt. Instead, he threw Johnny out with the help of a chain, grabbed the Saint Ganza scroll and tore it apart. Suddenly, countless evil spirits flew out from the dilapidated church behind them, screaming and flying into the body of the witch heart demon. Carter Slay fired 2 shots, but to no avail. Johnny ran to his motorcycle and took down the Gatling that John Wick had just sponsored. Under the erosion of the hellfire, Gatlin's whole body was covered with blue fire, and he shot bullets wrapped in the hellfire, blasting the witch heart demon into pieces and turning it into a scorched earth. Seeing this scene, Johnny smiled happily and even teased Carter Shirey. Old guy, this is much easier to use than your shotgun. But before he could be happy for 2 seconds, the inner demon that fell apart returned to its human form. The smile on Johnny's face faded. Episode 103, The Lord of Hell being tricked, the Vitality Bullet. After absorbing the evil spirits, the inner demon's strength greatly increased. Behind him, there were countless evil ghosts wailing and roaring. In the sky outside, strong storms are gathering, and the dark clouds exude despair and depression. Vaguely, a portal appeared in the church. That is the gate to hell. Mephisto collects souls in order to use these fallen spirits to bypass the supervision of the Holy Place Circle and build a dimensional portal that is large enough for his true body to pass through. As for the evil spirit, everything he does is under the control of Mephisto. The funny thing is that he thinks that with these evil spirits, he can successfully rebel and kill his father. The witch heart demon laughed wildly, and the hellfire that was originally extremely restraining him was ineffective. The two ghost riders, one old and one small, were beaten back and forth. The setting sun is gradually rising, and when the first ray of morning light shines on the earth, all that awaits them is death. Johnny! Use the Eye of Judgment! Carter Shirey roared, firing 2 shots in a row, shattering half of the witch's body, and then quickly recovered. He's getting old, and this transformation has drained the last drop of gas out of his tank, and he can no longer use his ultimate moves like Eye of Judgment. I can't get close to him at all. Johnny said helplessly in the air as his skull was blown away by the shockwave released by the witch heart demon, and was directly separated from his body. The witch heart demon also knew what his weaknesses were, and did not give him such a chance at all, keeping a distance from the two of them. Like a cat playing with a mouse. A trace of sadness flashed in Carter Shirey's eyes, and he stroked his horse. Please, old man. The skeleton war horse neighed, finally nuzzled its master's cheek, and rushed towards the witch heart demon without hesitation. He raised his hoof high and stepped on it hard. No matter how the witch heart demon attacks, it just presses him tightly. The flames on his body are getting weaker and weaker, and his body is gradually disintegrating. Now. Johnny. Without the slightest hesitation, Johnny rushed towards the witch heart demon, and looked into his eyes a second before the war horse was shattered into pieces. You are guilty. Under the eyes of the Eye of Judgment, the 1,000 evil spirits in Wuxinmo's body began to riot and burn. Wuxinmo, who originally had no soul in his body and could not be judged, was also implicated. Issued, roaring in pain. Souls were forced out of his body one by one, and the pupils of the witch heart demon turned into charcoal, and he fell to the ground helplessly, lifeless. What no one noticed was that an old man full of gentlemanly demeanor appeared silently in the corner, with a smile on his lips. None other than Mephisto, Lord of Hell. The souls who were judged by Ghost Rider will fall into hell. Now, the gate of hell is right in front of us. Those souls leaving the body of the witch heart demon are being sucked in by the gate of hell. However, a circle of fire suddenly appeared, and a suction force came from it. These evil spirits did not enter the gate of hell and strengthen the power of hell, but were intercepted halfway. Ancient One. Mephisto's face darkened. When he saw this iconic spell, he instantly knew that his plan had been discovered. Don't be so nervous, Mephisto, the Ancient One didn't come. Sun Wuming walked out of the mirror space on one side. It's you. Mephisto instantly recognized Sun Wuming's identity. The two had never met, but during the battle in New York, he felt that powerful and tenacious soul. This is the man in front of me. Perhaps our deal is the most fishy in the world. Mephisto quickly returned to his true nature as a devil, with a smile on his face. Although Mephisto is the Lord of Hell, his own strength has reached level Godfather. But he is not a Dimension Lord who is very good at fighting. What he is good at is conspiracy, and he achieves his goals through transactions and bewitchment. What is descended on Blue Star now is only a part of his consciousness. It does not carry much power at all and cannot be Sun Wuming's opponent. Don't agree to him. Wuming. Johnny reminded quickly, Mephisto's best thing is to confuse people and set traps in transactions. Sun Wuming ignored him, but stretched out his palm, and a transparent ball appeared in his palm, with thick black mist inside. Greed flashed in Mephisto's eyes. Trading is not impossible, but what kind of bargaining chips can you offer? Sun Wuming asked casually while playing with the ball. Longevity, wealth, health, and even the person who resurrects you. As long as you are willing to give these souls to me, all of this can be easily achieved. Mephisto's voice was mixed with spiritual spells, and even Johnny and Carter Shirey next to him were affected, recalling their relatives and lovers in their minds. Resurrection? Can you really do it? Definitely. Mephisto opened his arms confidently, countless souls live in my world. As long as you say his name, I can help you resurrect them. Sun Wuming shook his head, it is said that the devil is the best at lying. I will not believe you unless you sign a contract with me. No problem, young strong man. Mephisto smiled and called out a piece of parchment, who do you want to resurrect? Sun Wuming named a few names, and he signed them without any hesitation. The parchment floated into Sun Wuming's hand, and he checked that the content on it was correct. No hesitation, tore up the contract. Mephisto's smile disappeared. What do you mean? It's nothing. Sun Wuming spread his hands, I just confirmed whether the souls of these people are in your hands, and I don't want to make a deal with you. You're kidding me. Mephisto roared, a sinister wind blew in the church, and the originally kind old man's face turned into a devil. Yes, I am just playing tricks on you. Sun Wuming said sincerely, as we all know, the devil can play with people's hearts and weave lies, but only the contents of the contract cannot be false, and the conditions written must be true. So, I have to thank you for letting me confirm one thing. When he first made a wish to the dragon, Sun Wuming asked about his wish for resurrection. At that time, Shenlong said very vaguely that he could resurrect a person, but there would be serious consequences. Looking at it now, it should refer to Mephisto. At that time, Sun Wuming was still very weak and was really no match for Mephisto in a fight, but now? How dare you tease the great Lord of Hell? Mortal! I will take away your soul. The clay figurine still has a certain amount of anger, let alone a realm lord. Normally, Mephisto travels around the world as a human to coax souls, and he can keep his attitude low. But in the face of Sun Wuming's naked provocation, if he doesn't make some show, how will he be able to join the circle of these evil lords in the future? Boom! The dark green light was stimulated from the cane, and all obstacles along the way were corroded. Sun Wuming's body flashed, and he raised his finger and a whole wave shattered the light and shot through Mephisto's chest. Black mist emerged, and the hole in his chest was quickly filled up. Mephisto does not have an entity in the true sense. He coexists with the Hell dimension. Hell is immortal and Mephisto is immortal. This is also a difficulty for many dimension lords. They often come out to cause trouble only for duplication. After finally killing one of them, it doesn't take long to find that they have come to cause trouble again, which is very annoying. Dormammu is a typical representative of them, and Mephisto is no less. In human history, there have been many instances of thwarting the devil's conspiracy, but it has never been possible to prevent this guy from jumping out to cause trouble again. Sun Wuming's attack did not have much effect. Even the turtle-style Qigong only blasted this guy into dust, and the recovery of the physical body was a little slow. You can't kill me. Mortal. Mephisto showed a proud smile. He stopped resisting and just spent time with Sun Wuming, preparing to tire him to death or disgust him to death. There is really no dignity for a strong man. Sun Wuming frowned. In fact, he could also use Kamartaj's spell to directly expel Mephisto back to hell. But I felt that it was a little too cheap for him. Try this trick. Sun Wuming raised his hands high in the sky, creating a huge amount of energy ball. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all the plants trembled slightly, and small spots of light peeled off from his body, and finally became sluggish. The dark clouds in the sky were dispersed, and the light spots flew in the direction of Zhou Ming. As these light spots gathered in the energy ball became larger and larger. Mephisto's face changed, and a strong uneasiness arose in his heart. He had a hunch that if he was really hit, he might really be injured. Mephisto, who had always cherished his life, sensed something was wrong and already retreated, quickly flying towards the gate of hell. I want to run, but it's too late. Vitality bomb. Sun Wuming's eyes flashed with sternness, and he teleported to Mephisto. The energy ball in his hand, which was like a small sun, was thrown out by him. The 10-meter vitality bullet hit Mephisto's face hard, rubbing it so hard that his face shapeshifted. The gate of hell was also overwhelmed, with dense cracks appearing, and then completely collapsed. Ah 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 ah. Mephisto screamed, and plumes of black smoke came out of his body. Mortal. I remember you. I will definitely come back. Following a scream, Mephisto was completely submerged in the energy bomb. Boom. The ground shook violently, and Sun Wuming quickly dispersed his energy to avoid causing greater damage. Result? The church had already collapsed into ruins. Johnny and his girlfriend walked in, supporting Carter Shilly, who was too weak to walk. She probably won't come for the time being. Sun Wuming clapped his hands and released John. From the end, it can be seen that the vitality bullet must have caused a lot of damage to Mephisto. Unless he finds a way to deal with Sun Wuming, Mephisto will probably be a coward for a while during this period. Thank you, Wu Ming. Johnny thanked him quickly, and Carter Shirey also looked at him. Young man, I will leave these evil spirits to you to deal with. You must not let them harm the world. Don't worry, I will handle it properly. Sun Wuming put the ball into his pocket and planned to send it to Kamartaj soon and let the Ancient One take care of it. Carter Shirey smiled happily. The obsession he had always had was resolved, and the belief that supported him to live was gone. Finally, he looked at John, who had been silent. What do you think of him, old man? Johnny and his girlfriend looked at the old man in confusion, wondering who he was talking to. Before they could ask any questions, a flame flew out of Carter Shirey's mouth and rushed into John, who had no time to react. At the same time, the old man smiled and closed his eyes. Hell dimension. To be precise, hell is not a single dimension, but a huge space composed of many similar dimensions spliced together. However, these dimension lords are very satisfied with the name hell, so it has spread today, as a collective term. The sky here has been green since ancient times, and from time to time there are fiery red meteors whizzing past, exuding a strong smell of sulfur. Living in hell is originally a matter of pain and happiness coexisting. It is the weak who suffer. In hell, weakness is the original sin of everything. Powerful demons or devils can kill weak creatures for fun. Happiness definitely refers to powerful creatures, even hell lords. However, the current owner of this space cannot be called happy. In a palace made of bones, Mephisto's helpless and furious roar came out, and the sound wave turned into a shock wave, causing disaster to the nearby creatures. The 7 orifices that were shocked were bleeding and died. Eyelid. Sun Wuming. Saiyan. I want you to die. In the hall, everything that could be destroyed was smashed to pieces by Mephisto, but this did not reduce his anger at all. If he was simply driven back to his lair, he wouldn't be so irritable. He has experienced a lot of embarrassing things over the endless years and has long been accustomed to them. But this time is different. Sun Wuming's attack just now contained a strange energy, causing huge amounts of damage to him. It was obvious that the one who went out was duplication, but when he returned to the hell dimension, Lao Mo was surprised to find that a section of his origin had been cut off. He didn't immediately return to the world to fight for Sun Wuming. This was the result of the careful attitude he had developed over the years. This loss alone will take him 1,000 years to cultivate. While venting, Lao Sun's head full of conspiracies was still thinking about how to get revenge. At this time, a soft voice came and slapped the face, causing Mephisto's expression to change suddenly. Mephisto, why didn't you say hello to me when you came to the human world? You just came here in a hurry. Ancient One is free. Episode 104. The Ancient One makes a big fuss in the hell dimension. The meeting between Wong and Tony. Blessings come in pairs, and misfortunes never come alone. Mephisto didn't expect that even after he returned to hell, the Ancient One would come to visit him. For the Ancient One, the Latitude Lords who coveted Blue Star were filled with hatred, but there was nothing they could do about it. According to the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu, he has tried to invade Blue Star no less than 1,000 times, but every time he was about to succeed, he was destroyed by this old woman. The most hateful thing is that this old woman actually borrowed his power. Mephisto and the Ancient One were old acquaintances. He was just a little surprised that the Ancient One, who had always only guarded his own 1/3 of an acre of land, dared to come to his territory alone. Aren't you afraid that he would call the other lords to swarm her and leave her behind? However, after looking at the pendant on the woman's chest, Mephisto put away his thoughts. There is absolutely no problem for a group of Dimension Lords to defeat the Ancient One, but there is basically no hope of defeating the Ancient One who possesses Time Gem. There are 2 abilities, time and space. Space is no longer a powerful ability for the strong ones of level Godfather, but time is still unpredictable. What a rare visitor. The Sorcerer Supreme actually left the mortal world and came to my remote countryside. Don't blame me for poor hospitality. Mephisto put on his signature smile and ordered a table of tea, but it looked green and bubbling, which made people's appetite disappear. No, I can't bear the Hell Lord's tea. Ancient One said expressionlessly, let's talk about you going to Blue Star to do some tricks again. Ancient One. The smile disappeared from Mephisto's face. I've been so miserable, you still want me to settle the score? Is it too much to bully the devil? Ancient One, this time my skills are inferior to others, and I admit defeat, but if you are so aggressive, don't blame me for being rude. Mephisto said sternly. Powerful momentum erupted from his body, pressing towards the Ancient One. The entire space became turbulent with the owner's anger, and huge waves swept towards the Ancient One. The reason why a Dimension Lord is a Latitude Lord is because he has established a connection with this latitude. Even Mephisto, who is not good at fighting, can still exert super strong combat power with the blessing of hell. The Ancient One's expression remained unchanged, his body shook slightly, and he wore a monk's robe to hunt, and Mephisto's aura turned into a spring breeze blowing on his face. You lost to Sun Wuming because you have no ability. You invaded Blue Star because you didn't take me seriously. Mephisto, I want to see how rude you can be to me. As the Ancient One finished speaking, the surrounding space fluctuated. Mephisto was shocked to find that he was actually dragged into the mirror space by the Ancient One in his own territory. It was still a scene of hell, but the support latitude gave him was cut off, and his strength dropped to normal. However, he quickly calmed down in panic. It was just a mirror space. As long as level Godfather moved his hands casually, it could be easily broken. Mephisto stretched out his arm confidently and grabbed it hard, leaving dark green claw marks all over the world. The mirror space shook for a moment, but there was no sign of collapse. How is that possible? Mephisto's expression changed. Then he saw Ancient One's calm expression. What have you done? Why is the mirror space so strong? It's nothing, I just used the power of Time Gem. The eye of Agamotto on Ancient One's chest exuded a faint light, and Mephisto was dumbfounded. Clang! The ring of Ragador appeared in his hand, and Fisto retreated continuously. Stop, we have something to talk about, Ancient One, this time it's me. Ah. Don't slap me in the face. Don't slap me in the face. Ancient One. Just wait for me. After you die, I will invade Blue Star 100 times, 100 times. In the mirror space, Mephisto's screams became louder and louder. It took half an hour before Ancient One lifted the blockade. Mephisto made a sudden thrust, returned to his own territory, and quickly used the power of the world to restore the head that had been beaten into a pig's head. This is just a small warning. If you dare to do something small again, Mephisto, I will make you a backer even if I die. After Ancient One finished speaking, he pinched a seal, and the ring of Ragador in his hand quickly grew in size, forming a magic circle. What are you doing? Stop. Mephisto instinctively felt something was wrong and shouted quickly. Boom. Violent shock swept through the entire space, and Mephisto spit out a mouthful of blood. You. Mephisto looked at the Ancient One with an almost murderous look. A corner of his hell dimension was shattered by the Ancient One. For a dimension lord, anything, BCBC, can be sacrificed, believers, souls, and even duplication. But dimensional space is their lifeblood. The stronger the space, the stronger they will be. And just now, Mephisto sensed that nearly 1% of the space was cut off by the Ancient One. This is poaching his body. Ancient One, you are going too far. Mephisto was going crazy. The hellfire gathered into a long sword and slashed out a sword energy. At the same time, hurricanes, magma, poisonous gas, everything flew towards the Ancient One, but in the end they only hit Lonely. What was left there was just a projection of the Ancient One. As for her true body, she had already escaped after releasing the magic circle. In fact, if Mephisto hadn't devoted too much attention to Blue Star, Ancient One's little move would not have been so smooth. It can only be said that she and Sun Wuming had a tacit cooperation from a distance. One person restrains him, while the other steals the house and sends Mephisto to death. After blasting away the phantom of the Ancient One, Mephisto regained consciousness and hurriedly rushed into the turbulent flow of the void with the latitude fragment, trying to save it. But what made his eyes dizzy was that the fragment of space that was torn from hell was as thick as 1,002 nets divided up by a group of dimensional lords. For these Mephisto lords, the unowned latitude space is a great source of nourishment. A small piece of debris, but under the sharing of the spoils by several lords, not even a single hair was left for Mephisto. Seeing Mephisto coming, there were a few big-eyed smiles at him with a kind smile. As if to say, "Thank you Lao Tai for sending me the rocket." Puff. Mephisto finally couldn't bear it anymore and blood spurted out from his mouth. XXX. XXX. Texas. Sun Wuming opened the portal and took several people back to the cemetery. Johnny silently dug up the empty tomb with the words Carter Shilley written on it, and put the old man into the coffin he had prepared. He dug a small hole on the other side and put the remains of the war horse and the shotgun in it. The first generation of Ghost Rider has completely withdrawn from the stage of history. Although they only met 3 times, this old man was his teacher to Johnny Blaze. John, on the other hand, stood beside Sun Wuming a little gloomily. God knows how he became the Ghost Rider just for fun. This old man is serious about not asking for his opinion. Seeing the frowning expression, Sun Wuming couldn't help but smile. It's too late for others to be happy. Why do you have this expression when it's your turn? John put his hands on his hips and shook his head helplessly. If possible, I really don't want to accept this power. Wuming, do you have a way to take that guy out? Unless you die, I can't do it. Sun Wuming said under John's disappointed eyes and patted his shoulder. Look at it, the power of the spirit of vengeance can be considered a kind of protection for you. The world is getting more and more unstable, and it is always good to have the power of self-protection. John nodded silently and suddenly said, "You and I will go back to New York and stay in Texas. I can't guarantee that this guy will cause any trouble." Thinking of the days when he was chased by Johnny Blaze a few days ago, John felt a little numb. It was really Johnny chasing him, and the police chasing Johnny, and no one was spared. "No problem, I'll give you some special training when you get back." Sun Wuming agreed. It just so happened that the Continental Hotel was still short of a master, and John Wick was a good candidate. Forget it about special training. John Wick waved his hands repeatedly. It's not like he didn't see Johnny's painful appearance. Only a devil would do such self-abuse special training. How about I'm one of them? Johnny walked up to the 2 of them and looked at Sun Wuming with some embarrassment. I am still a wanted fugitive in Texas, and I can no longer stay here. It just so happens that Rosie also plans to go to New York for development. Is there a job suitable for me? Sun Wuming rubbed his chin, thinking about how to arrange Johnny. He is different from John. John is a veteran killer and is familiar with the routines of the Continental Hotel, but Johnny is a newbie. Do you want to be an Avenger? Forget it. Johnny shook his head like a rattle. I don't want to live in the spotlight, I just want to be an ordinary person. Okay, how about the security captain? Longzhu Technology is my company, you won't have any trouble working there. Thank you very much. Johnny nodded gratefully, not feeling wronged at all. Only Sun Wuming feels weird. Even Hell uses a three-headed dog to guard the door, and when it comes to him, it directly turns into a ghost rider. There is an inexplicable card. After the discussion, Sun Wuming gave Johnny a contact number and asked him to contact this number when he and his girlfriend arrived in New York. If anything happened, he could also contact him directly. And John also needs to sell his farm and plans to go there with Johnny after a while. Sun Wuming returned to New York alone. Originally, he planned to go to Kamartosh first, but he remembered that Tony had been pestering him a few days ago to meet the Ancient One and want to learn spells. In order to dispel the thought of this thing, I might as well bring it with me this time. Tony, Banner, how many days have you two been gone? Sensing Tony's aura, Sun Wuming teleported over and found that the location he was in was the laboratory of Avengers Tower. The dark circles under the eyes of the two old men were bigger than the other, and they were just short of becoming immortals. Oh, Wuming, what can you do? The sudden sound interrupted the two people who were arguing fiercely. Tony was already used to seeing Sun Wuming appear out of thin air. He would be surprised if this guy walked through the main entrance one day. Sun Wuming said, I'm going to Kamartosh, do you want to come with me? But I think what you need more now is to have a good sleep. Is this where you learned the portal? Go, definitely go. Tony was so excited that he ran to the table nearby, picked up a bottle of drink and drank it. This is a refreshing drink jointly developed by him and Banner, and it is much more effective than those on the market. After drinking, although the dark circles under my eyes were still big, my spirits were finally better. Sun Wuming shook his head and opened the portal, facing Kamartosh. Banner, please rest first and wait until I come back before continuing. Tony told Banner again before following Sun Wuming. Finally gone. Banner let out a long sigh of relief when he saw that the portal was closed. Tony has been going crazy lately, dragging him to stay in the laboratory day and night. Several times, Banner wanted Hulk to come out and go back to sleep. Now that he was pulled away, he almost fell on the sofa and fell asleep. This is the Kamartosh you're talking about. It's nothing like what I thought. On the other side, Tony followed Sun Wuming to Kamartosh. Looking at a pair of dilapidated houses similar to those in a poor mountain village, Tony said that his worldview was once shattered. What about the magician tower? What about those weird magician props? And that group of people boxing on the playground? You are magicians. Why do you practice fighting? Fairy tales are all lies. Master Fa is definitely going to engage in close combat. Sun Wuming said without looking back. He happened to see Wong walking out of the library and quickly stopped him. Hey! King! When he heard someone calling him, Wong turned around subconsciously and saw Sun Wuming and Button Stark beside him. Wong's face turned green instantly. Vomit. Tony was stunned for a moment and was so angry at Wong's reaction that he pointed at him and asked, what does he mean? Am I so disgusting? Well, it's not your fault. If I'm to blame, just blame the nut ice cream with the same name as you. Sun Wuming explained as black lines appeared on his forehead. He had previously given Wong 2 entire freezers of Tony's shit hazelnut ice cream. Judging from his reaction, he probably finished eating it all. Tony wanted to say something more, but was interrupted by Sun Wuming. You and Wong go to the library to have a look. I'm going to find the Ancient One first. Sun Wuming left quickly and could still hear Tony's curse and Wong's apology when he walked out. He shook his head and opened the door of the tea room. Ancient One was sitting on his seat, sipping the tea, and there was a small bag on the tea table, which should be a reward for Sun Wuming. Sun Wuming sat directly opposite Ancient One and took out the small bead that sealed the evil spirit. Sir, what should I do with this thing? Mephisto, Malphite, this name makes me think like a stone man. Some places are different. Please bear with me. After all, it is a transliteration, and it is too easy to limit. Episode 105, Tony's Magic Armor, Hydra Captain America. At the moment, Goo didn't even look like he had just made a big fuss in hell. Looking at the light ball on the table, a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. It's not that he hates these evil spirits, but he hates Mephisto's methods. Among all the Heavenly Fathers, this guy's methods are the most shameless and have the least bottom line. But it is also the most difficult to deal with. For example, this time, Mephisto did not bring any power, and even the Ancient One could not detect him. Put it here, I will seal it later. Be careful, don't let anyone use it to cause trouble again. I promised others. Sun Wuming reminded while putting away the tea bag. Ancient One had a dark face. In front of Sun Wuming, he opened a time turbulence and threw the ball of light into it. Don't worry now. Unless the next Sorcerer Supreme uses Eye of Agamotto, no one can come up with it. This guy made it clear that he didn't trust Kamartosh's protective methods. Don't worry, Your Majesty. After all, Kamartosh has more than half of the fallen magicians in the world. Sun Wuming said slowly, not caring about Ancient One's increasingly darker face. Kamartosh has a lot of criminal records, which is also the reason why Ancient One doesn't do anything. But it is undeniable that Kamartosh's supervision is so lax that even Kaisalius can tear out 2 pages of black magic and run away leisurely. Ancient One also understands its management problems. But this is her temperament and she is too lazy to change it. In order to avoid being exposed, I decisively changed the topic. What move did you use to defeat Mephisto? I think he was seriously injured. Have you seen him? Sun Wuming asked in surprise. Go to hell and have a chat with him. Ancient One answered lightly, and Sun Wuming gave a thumbs up. He thought that Ancient One was not going to care about Mephisto's matter, but it turned out that the big one was behind him. It's okay. This kind of move is only very effective against evil enemies. If I hit you, Venerable, I guess I won't even be able to break through the defense. That's pretty good. Ancient One nodded happily. This move is very effective against Dimension Lords. None of those weird lords is good. The two chatted casually for a while, and then Sun Wuming stood up and left, preparing to take Tony home. To his surprise, Tony, who just wanted to duel with Wong just now, started hooking up with someone again. The ice cream was not delicious, and although I authorized them to use my name, it was only because the CEO of that company had a relationship with me before, well, you know. I recommend you to try the Hood brand, which is a sub-brand of Wumingji Longzhu technology, especially the blueberry flavor and cocktails are very good. Wong heard what Tony said so eloquently and nodded repeatedly, wishing he could find a piece of paper to write it down. Also, I'm very interested in waffles and all kinds of desserts. Ahem. Sun Wuming coughed lightly, which made Tony and Wong turn their heads. I'm going back, Tony, let's go. Go back? Why go back? Tony looked surprised. I have already agreed with Wong that I will live in his dormitory these days. I plan to stay here for a while. Okay, I'll go back by myself. Sun Wuming said nonchalantly, but you're wrong. The most delicious ice cream in my house is vanilla. After saying that, he teleported away. Tony shrugged and looked back at Wong. Don't listen to him, young people don't understand sweets at all. In fact, Tony stayed longer than Sun Wuming expected. He didn't leave Kamartosh for 2 months in a row, and all the little peppers came to him and asked if Tony was messing around again. Finally, he took her to Kamartosh, and Little Pepper felt relieved. However, such long-term research is not without rewards. Although Tony himself does not have the qualifications to borrow the power of latitude, this does not mean that he cannot use the power of magic. Just like what Mordu introduced to Sun Wuming, Tony regarded all spells and gestures as a kind of programming code, and gradually found the trick and began to use URU metal on the armor. When Sun Wuming found out, he was a little surprised. This brain was no longer cursed, it was simply chewed by the eternal god. In the end, Tony bought half of the URU metal at the cost of building a set for Sun Wuming every time he updated his armor. Wong, I'm leaving. Remember to find me when you come to New York. Tony, you are always welcome at Kamartosh. Seeing Sun Wuming coming to take Tony back to New York, Wong showed a reluctant expression. It's not that I didn't want to part with Tony, but I just didn't want to let go of my wallet and he just flew away. Kamartosh is not easy either. The Ancient One doesn't have much control and there are very few rules, but one of the most important ones is that it is not allowed to obtain money through the power of magic. The dilapidated houses Tony saw when he came were not because of the noble character of the magicians, but because they had no money. A few years later, after Strange became the Sorcerer Supreme, Tian couldn't even afford ice cream. With Tony's generosity in taking action, the magicians in Kamartosh are so full of food recently that even the Wi-Fi has been replaced by 4G. Looking at the disappearing portal, Wong patted the pocket in his arms. There is still $500,000 in it, which should be enough for him to spend for several years. Just when Wong thought so. In the ears of the Ancient One's voice. Pay the tuition fees taught by Stark to Kamartosh's public account. Instantly turned into a bitter melon face. Pacific Ocean, above the high seas. Under the cover of darkness, a ghost aircraft was traveling at high speed in the sky. This mission is to rescue the hostages, the leader of the terrorists. Rumlow is describing the intelligence and requirements of this mission to Captain America and other SHIELD agents. Although Captain America has joined the Avengers, it does not mean that he will not perform tasks for S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury originally used standard vocabulary such as international security and counterterrorism and the United States, but he fooled Captain America back into it in just a few clicks. But not long after, Nick Fury himself was kicked out by S.H.I.E.L.D. This also does not affect Captain America's status in S.H.I.E.L.D. Because Hydra also regards him as one of its own. In the future, Captain America came back and said "Hail, Hydra" to say that he was happy, but he directly cheated himself in this world. After a battle, Captain America led Rumlow's Special Response Force and successfully eliminated a boatload of terrorists and rescued the hostages. When facing powerful enemies, he claims to be 50-50, but against these agents who are not even at the level of a human being, his combat effectiveness is undoubtedly overwhelming. At this time, the Salt Sitwell agent came up and hugged him. "It's an honor for you to choose to side with us, Captain." Captain America frowned, not understanding what Sitwell meant. "Sitwell, we've always been on one side." Sitwell laughed. "That's right, Captain." Gunshots were heard on the deck. Captain America turned around suddenly, and the terrorists he subdued fell into a pool of blood at the moment. Back at SHIELD headquarters, Sitwell brought the thumb drive to Pierce's office. "Chief, all preparations have been completed, and the space carrier will take off in 3 days. Have the underlying instructions been modified?" Pierce asked. Sitwell was in trouble. The leader, Dr. Zola, said that once it is modified, loopholes will appear. If the variable Sun Wuming is added, many targets will be affected, and even logical contradictions will appear. That must be changed too. Pierce patted the table. "We don't have the means to deal with him yet. No matter what, we cannot let Sun Wuming become our enemy. The purpose of Project Insight is to eliminate all threats to Hydra's dominance of the world. How to judge whether a person is a threat to Hydra can only be determined through factors such as big data, interpersonal relationships, special personalities, and even DNA. Maybe a person is just an ordinary company employee now, but may pose a threat to Hydra in the future. Such a person would rather kill the wrong person than let go." However, the superstandard existence of Sun Wuming disrupted all Hydra deployments. Although he himself is not on the list, his girlfriend Gwen Stacy, Gwen's father George Stacy, and even classmate Peter Parker are all on the list of the Insight Project. If these hidden dangers are not eliminated, it will undoubtedly anger Sun Wuming. After Sitwell left, Pierce lowered the iron door and sealed the office. He took out an old-fashioned push-button cell phone from the drawer and dialed a number. "Ask for Flowers." "Strucker, has there been no progress in the research on Scepter?" "Baron Strucker, another leader of HYDRA. After World War II, the original leader Schmidt died, and Hydra also split. Each of them cooperated with each other in their development. Pierce's faction was the United States faction that was naturalized by S.H.I.E.L.D. Strack, the direct descendant left behind by Schmidt, fled to Eastern Europe and developed secretly based on this. Pierce, how long has it been since then? If these cosmic wonders were so easy to study, the leader would not have failed. In a fortress in Sokovia, Baron Strucker said displeasedly. Pierce cursed in his heart a waste and spent such a huge price to get the scepter from Sun Wuming. As a result, half a year passed and nothing was researched. The Insight Project is about to start. When can Sun Wooly be eradicated? There is no need to be so anxious, my friend. Baron Storic said calmly, once my superpower experiment is successful, that Sun Wuming will not be a threat at all, so what if I let him live a little longer? Pierce snorted coldly, send Scepter to the United States within 3 days. This is Dr. Zola's request. After saying that, Pierce hung up the phone. Straker snorted and dropped the phone on the ground. All HYDRA leaders have equal status, so he was naturally unhappy when Pierce spoke to him in such a commanding tone. 00, but when Zola spoke, he had to do it. Zola, who uploaded his consciousness to the computer, could be regarded as the real brain of HYDRA. They could not develop to this day without Zola's help. Conduct one last set of experiments. Then send this damn scepter away. The men quickly brought the experimenters up. Chief, these two are twins. They have deep hostility towards Stark. There is absolutely no problem with their background. Straker nodded with satisfaction. Let's get started. Washington. After a day's work, Steve Rogers left SHIELD and slowly walked home. Along the way, his brows did not relax, and he was obviously troubled by some problem. Since Nick Fury left S.H.I.E.L.D., Captain America felt that SHIELD began to change. But what exactly is wrong? He couldn't tell, but it wasn't until today, after Rumlow killed everyone without hesitation, that he suddenly woke up. It's a matter of style. This style reminded him of his old rival, Hydra. In the past, when Nick Fury was around, SHIELD didn't give him such a feeling. Although the guy lied a lot and no one believed him, at least he thought Fury was sincere. The current SHIELD did not give him such a feeling. Unknowingly, he walked downstairs to his apartment. Captain America shook his head and extinguished the thoughts in his mind. SHIELD is an organization established by the Security Council. How could it have anything to do with HYDRA? Pushing open the door, Captain America stiffened. He felt that there was someone in the room. Captain, it's me. A low voice came from the living room, and a man who perfectly blended into the dark environment came out. Fury? Captain America said in surprise, how did you get in? Don't talk, keep your facial expression, someone is watching you. Nick Fury said in a low voice. He was still standing in the darkness, and Song could see some shadows from the light source behind him. Captain America was shocked when he heard that he was actually being monitored. He quickly returned to his usual state and walked into the bedroom as if nothing had happened. I need your help, Captain, there may be something wrong with S.H.I.E.L.D. Boom. The next day, early in the morning, the light of Bifrost landed on a beach in New York. When the colorful light dissipated, the silhouette of the hammer god Thor was revealed. Returning to Blue Star after half a year, Thor had a smile on his face. Go and give the Tesseract to Wuming first, and then I can go find Jane. I don't know if Jane will blame me for not looking for her after I participated in the Battle of New York last time. Thor swung the hammer and rose into the sky, flying towards the villa area not far away. Sorry for getting up a little late today. I didn't finish my writing in the morning. Episode 106, TIE Particles, Return to Asgard. I'm sorry, Wuming, for taking so long to send the Tesseract. The 9 realms are in chaos recently, and my hammer is almost smoking. At Sun Wuming's house, Thor was sitting carelessly on the sofa, with a blue Tesseract and his hammer on the coffee table. I'm not in a hurry, just bring it here. Sun Wuming drank tea and wanted to give Thor a cup. But this idiot has no interest in tea at all and only wants to drink. I started drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning. No wonder I became so fat in the future. Lorna, who was at home on vacation, looked at Mjolnir curiously. Living with Sun Wuming, she also has a lot of knowledge about the Avengers superheroes, and she also knows the specialness of Mjolnir. Those who are not recognized cannot lift the hammer. Her ability is to control metal. What will happen if she fights against this hammer? The little girl is very curious and does whatever comes to her mind, quietly using her ability. What surprised her was that her ability to face all kinds of metals in the past failed this time. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move the hammer at all. Of course, Lorna's little moves couldn't be hidden from Sun Wuming and Thor. Seeing her return in vain, Thor laughed loudly. Only me and Wuming can lift Mjolnir. Green hair, you haven't gotten its approval yet. Hearing the unpleasant nickname Thor gave herself, Lorna glared at him unconvinced. How can I get the approval of hammer? Thor said narcissistically, at least you must be righteous, kind and have a pure soul like Wuming and I. Lorna, 680. She looked at Thor in disbelief, and then at Sun Wuming, who was indifferent and continued to drink tea. Which of these qualities does this guy possess? Squeezing a little girl every day has nothing to do with kindness and integrity. What are you looking at? Am I not? Sun Wuming looked at her sideways. No. I just think what he said is very abstract. Maybe I haven't noticed it yet. Lorna smiled reluctantly. You are hesitated, and your salary will be halved this month. You. Lorna gritted her teeth in anger, but finally chose to swallow her anger. Bad guy. The few of them chatted casually for a while, and then Thor asked Sun Wuming to open a portal and send him to Jane. You two haven't broken up yet? Sun Wuming looked at him in surprise. Why did we break up? Thor was puzzled. Jane and I have a very good relationship. How long has it been since you last met? Thor said nonchalantly, it's not too long, just more than a year. It's nothing. Sometimes I go out to fight and I don't see Loki and my father for 10 years. Sun Wuming looked at him with pity, trying to find a hint of green in Thor's blonde hair. Not long after the relationship was confirmed, we have been dating across the globe for a year and a half, and our hearts are really big. There is indeed an insurmountable gap between the time concept of immortal species and that of ordinary people. But after he said so, Sun Wuming didn't mind helping him a little, and casually opened a teleportation array leading to Mexico. After sending Thor away, Sun Wuming took a closer look at the picture of the universe. This thing helped him the least among several gems. After mastering teleportation and portals, Sun Wuming had no place to use the space gem. The infinite energy contained within it cannot be converted into his strength. Let's put it in space to eat dust first. Wuming, I need your help. Jane has some problems. Sun Wuming thought that after Thor left, he would probably not see anyone for a few days. Unexpectedly, in the afternoon, he received a call for help from Thor. Only then did I remember what should happen next. TIE particles. That is, the reality gem appears. Sun Wuming had no hesitation and immediately picked them up. Wuming, there is a strange power in Jane's body, and even I can't get close to her. Thor said anxiously. Don't worry. Sun Wuming pressed down with one hand to ask Thor to calm down, and then asked, what's going on your face? On Thor's face, 2 slap marks, one on the left and one on the right, were symmetrical and conspicuous. Thor touched it awkwardly. I accidentally dropped it just now. It will be fine in a while. Jane's face also turned a little red. This is not important, Wuming. Thor quickly changed the subject. Jian's current state is very dangerous. Do you know what's going on? Thor, do you know TIE particles? Sun Wuming asked. Thor shook his head blankly. Sun Wuming is really worried about the future of Asgard. The king is a father-in-law and the future is dark. TIE particles are the treasure of the Dark Elves, and their owner is Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves. Gudong. Thor rubbed his stomach. That name is quite appetizing. Don't interrupt. Sun Wuming looked at Thor speechlessly, and then said until he shut up. 7,000 years ago, Malekith wanted to use TIE particles to plunge the 9 realms into permanent darkness and launched a war against Asgard, but was ultimately defeated by the then god King Bor. Wait a minute. Thor suddenly recalled something. You're saying that Jane's weirdness is related to the Dark Elves, but weren't they all wiped out by my grandfather? Jane's problem has nothing to do with the Dark Elves. Sun Wuming shook his head, but the Dark Elves have not been completely eliminated. Even the leader Malekith is still alive. I guess Jane went somewhere and accidentally obtained TIE particles. The reason why you can't get close to Jane is because the TIE particles in her body spontaneously protect the host. As he spoke, Sun Wuming stretched out his arm to Jane, and a strange dark red light stopped his hand. It was that strange space. Jane said suddenly, I went to a basement with abnormal reactions, and then I passed out. 5 hours had passed since I woke up. Then can you help Jane take it out? Thor asked again. Cannot. Sun Wuming shook his head. If you want to take out the TIE particles without hurting Jane, I am unable to do so. In fact, it's not impossible. It won't be long before the cooldown time of Dragon Balls is up. Now, just beat Jane to death, take out the TIE particles, and then make a wish to revive her later. But this method first depends on whether Thor and Jane will agree. Even if they agree, Sun Wuming is not willing. He would not do such a stupid thing, to waste a wish on an outsider. What should we do? Thor panicked again, and even Jane was not calm now. I'll let Tony take a look. He should have a solution. Sun Wuming said and called Tony. After hearing what happened here, Tony directly asked the 3 of them to go to the laboratory in Avengers Tower. After finishing the inspection, Tony shook his head helplessly. Sorry, I can indeed use TIE particles to glass this lady's body, but it will take too long, at least half a year to start. Thor said hurriedly, time is not a problem, Jane will cooperate with your treatment. No, Thor, it's not that simple. Tony sighed and took a tablet. According to the instrument, Jane's vitality is being swallowed up by TIE particles all the time. If it remains in its current state, it will take up to a month. Tony didn't say anything, and Thor and Jane understood what he meant. Don't worry Jane, I won't let anything happen to you. Holding Jane's hand, Thor said firmly. Ignoring the 2 people's gossip, Tony came to Sun Wuming and asked quietly, what exactly are TIE particles? Its characteristics are simply amazing. They are both tangible and invisible, and cannot be measured at all. It's almost the same as the space gem. Sun Wuming said softly. Seeing the strong research desire in Tony's eyes, he added, I have already reserved this thing, so don't think about it. No, when you get it, just lend it to me to study. Tony said nonchalantly. Finally, Thor decided to take Jane to Asgard for treatment. In his mind, Odin was omnipotent and there must be a way to remove the TIE particles from Jane's body. Sun Wuming naturally wanted to go with him. TIE particles are reality gem, and he definitely can't let Thor deliver the gem to the collector. Wait a minute, count me in, my skills can definitely help. When Tony saw that the 2 of them were going to Asgard, he immediately said that he wanted to go too. Of course Thor wouldn't refuse. The 4 came to an open lawn. Thor called Heimdall and lowered Bifrost. Is this Asgard? Tony was wearing a battle armor, opened his mask, and looked at the surrounding scenery. It's not what I expected, but it's beautiful. I thought you would live like a Viking, but I didn't expect you to be so advanced. Tony complained. As spaceships came and went in the sky, Tony recognized at a glance that they were equipped with anti-gravity technology. He also obtained this technology from Sun Wuming, but he has not yet thoroughly studied it. What are you thinking about? Asgard is a cosmic civilization with highly advanced technology, much more powerful than Chitauri. Sun Wuming said speechlessly. Sorry. Tony glanced at Thor. I really didn't see it. Heimdall saw that Thor actually brought 2 mortals to Asgard, and immediately realized that something was wrong. Thor, you shouldn't do this. He did not include Sun Wuming, because the other party was stronger than a god, so he was naturally qualified to visit Asgard. But Tony and Jane don't have this weight in Heimdall's eyes. Heimdall, I will take them to see my father now. I believe he will understand me. Thor hurriedly said something, then led Jane past Heimdall and walked towards the fourth camp. After walking through Bifrost and entering Asgard, Tony continued to use the suit to record information about Asgard. If he hadn't been brought by Thor, he would have been detained long ago. The three went straight to Odin's palace and met the King of God. Father. Thor saluted Odin, and Tony also used the Viking etiquette he had just found from the information and patted his chest heavily. Odin ignored them and greeted Sun Wuming first. Welcome. Sun Wuming said hello. Odin then changed his gaze, his eyes changed from kind to angry, and the eternal spear hit the ground heavily, making a crisp sound. Thor, I just asked you to tell the Tesseract to Wuming, why did you come back with two mortals? Father, Jane is sick, she. Thor raised his head and looked directly at Odin. Wow, he seems to be a stubborn patriarch. Tony complained to Sun Wuming in a low voice. His first impression of Odin was very bad. The word mortal is harsh to the ears. This is not a violation of the reason for Asgard's rules. Odin interrupted Thor rudely. It's normal for mortals to get sick and die, but what does this have to do with Asgard? Okay, let me talk about it in 4.5. Sun Wuming was too lazy to listen anymore. He knew that Odin was angry because Thor didn't break up with Jane. But Sun Wuming was not interested in this complicated family conflict and interrupted Odin. The TIE particles are in Jane's body. Is there any way you can take them out? What? Odin's one eye flashed with horror. Yes, you heard it right. Sun Wuming stretched out his hand to Jane again and gave Odin a demonstration. After seeing the iconic red light, Ding immediately believed Sun Wuming's words. Father, is there anything you can do? Thor asked again. Only Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, can control TIE particles, and I can't either. Odin waved his hand and called two guards, send this mortal to the Queen of Heaven. Father. Shut up. I'm doing this for her own good. Odin interrupted Thor, since you are here, you are a guest. Take your friends to have a good time. You have nothing to do here. Seeing his father's resolute attitude, Thor didn't dare to say anything and left the palace with Tony. Sun Wuming, are you here for TIE particles? Definitely. Sun Wuming said, but do you really have no way to take out the TIE particles? I can't do it without hurting that mortal life. I believe the same is true for you. Odin sighed, and Sun Wuming found that his condition was much worse than last time. I have a hunch that Malekith will definitely come to snatch TIE particles. Sun Wuming, the fate of the 9 realms depends on you. Episode 107, The Invasion of Darkness, The End of the God King. Facts have proved that Odin's hunch was quite accurate. 2 days later, in Frigga's palace, Frigga was chatting with Jane, and Thor beside her was just having fun. He felt that Frigga liked Jane quite a lot, and if he asked her to help her say a few words, maybe Odin would agree. In his memory, every time he and Loki made a mistake, Frigga would plead with Odin, and Odin would spare them or give them a lighter punishment. This time will probably be no exception. Looking at Shale's son, Frigga shook her head helplessly. This silly boy takes everything too naively. Jane and Thor are creatures from 2 worlds, one has a lifespan of thousands of years, or even nearly 10,000 years. One is less than 100 years old. Even if they are together now, when Jane dies, Thor will only be left with endless loneliness. What's more, now Odin has no time to let Thor enjoy the love between children. Frigga was very aware of her husband's physical condition. Within 3 years, he would be completely unable to suppress the divine power in his body and his soul would return to Soul Castle. Thor must grow up quickly and assume the responsibilities of a king. And the reason why she was so gentle and kind to Jane was also because of her debt mentality. It's not that you are bad, it's just that the two of you are not suitable. Just as Frigga was thinking about how to compensate Jane for asking her to take the initiative to leave Thor, a piercing siren suddenly sounded outside. Thor immediately stood up with the hammer in hand, and looked towards the direction of the sound with Frigga. That's a prison over there, it must be Loki's fault. Thor was furious, and regardless of the facts, he put the pot on Loki's head. Jane still wanted to say a few nice words for his brother in a reserved manner, but then she saw Frigga nodding her head in approval. Loki is naughty again, Thor, go and see, Jane is safe here with me. Thor ran out with the hammer and rushed all the way to the prison. When he reached the gate, he saw the source of the commotion. A group of prisoners held by Asgard all ran out for some reason. The guards were trying their best to push them back, but due to the small number of people, they could only retreat again and again. Tony also flew over wearing a steel suit. Hey, looks like you need some help, hunk. Tony, where's Wuming? Thor asked as he knocked away an alien creature that was rushing towards him. I don't know. I haven't seen him in the past 2 days. Maybe he is communicating with your people in depth. Tony teased with a smile, but was greeted by Thor. Do you think Wuming is as unreliable as you? He changed 3 girls in 2 days. I will definitely choose Pepper. Thor, don't make trouble. Tony was anxious now. He came to Asgard and indulged himself for 2 days. If Pepper knew about it, there would be no place for him in this family. I'll help you solve these troubles, how about you keep it secret for me? That depends on your performance. With the power now in hand, Tony no longer fished for fish. He opened a hole in his shoulder armor and cooperated with JARVIS. He instantly locked onto countless prisoners and launched missiles, triggering a series of explosions. Call out. A strange-looking prisoner shot at Tony with a weapon used to rob the jailer. The blue laser hit the armor and was strangely absorbed. Tony stretched out his arm and returned the laser to its original path. Thor was a little surprised when he saw this. With Tony's current performance, his armor was much stronger than during the New York battle. You actually used URU metal to build your iron shell? Isn't it possible? Tony asked proudly. Definitely. Thor triggered the thunder and gave Tony a wave of electricity. URU metal is very precious, you are wasting it. Tony raised his hand and fired 2 pulse cannons. I'm sorry, I still have a lot of inventory on hand. I gave me half of the destroyer armor. Rumble. While the two were bickering, huge amounts of explosions came from Bifrost. The sky over there suddenly became gloomy, and a space carrier of huge amounts suddenly appeared, opened the hatch at the bottom, and flew out countless small flight vehicles without any hindrance into the interior of the fourth palace. This scene is exactly the same as last time. The enemy disintegrated Asgard's defense measures from the inside, and the whole process was unimpeded. It's the Dark Elves. They must be here to find TIE particles. Damn it, Loki, he must be the one behind him. Thor shouted loudly, Tony, we must quell the turmoil here as soon as possible and go back to find Jane. You really have a good brother. Tony couldn't help but complain. He's adopted. Thor swung his hammer harder. Above Asgard, one flight after another belonging to Asgard is fighting the Dark Elves. Odin is sitting in the temple. He is now too old to take action, which will only speed up his death. At the same time, he also guessed the purpose of the Dark Elves and sent 2 teams of elites to the palace to protect Frigga. The idea is good, but the strengths of the 2 sides are not proportional at all. Malekith sent his only remaining cursed warrior to snatch the TIE particles, and even he himself slipped in during the chaos. The cursed warrior is a powerful warrior made from fragments of TIE particles. Its normal strength is several times higher than that of Thor. Ordinary immortals cannot cause any trouble when encountering him. Soon, after all the guards were eliminated, Malekith entered the palace with the cursed warrior. Frigga held a short sword in front of Jane. Don't go any further, I can keep you alive. You can't do anything to me, woman. Malekith sneered, do you think you are Bor, or his son Odin? Even they can't do anything to me. I may not be your match. Frigga smiled faintly and looked at the corner, but someone can. Only then did Malekith realize that besides Frigga and the target of this trip, there was another person in the room. I have never understood why Loki is so good at melee combat but still loves melee combat. Now I think I have found the reason. Sun Wuming stood up and looked at the dagger in Frigga's hand. Madam, it turns out it's all your fault. Frigga smiled sheepishly. The folk customs of Asgard are tough, even magicians like to fight in close combat, and she, the queen, is no exception. Is a mortal who appears out of nowhere your trump card? Curse the warrior, kill him. After receiving the order, the cursed warrior let out an angry roar and rushed forward like a beast, while Malekith's target was aimed directly at Jane behind Frigga. The two directly competed in swordsmanship. Years of being pampered did not let Frigga's skills deteriorate. She was still able to beat Malekith with very sharp movements. Jane's eyes were filled with stars, and she wanted to be such a woman. She was usually graceful and luxurious, but at critical moments, she could also show the demeanor of a strong woman. And the cursed warrior. Well, he just lost it. After Sun Wuming punched him, the cursed warrior looked at his fist, and then at Sun Wuming's delicate, little fist. His eyes were full of confusion, and then turned into ashes. Sun Wuming was too lazy to use the second move, and just sat aside to watch the show after the fight. What? Seeing that the trump card he relied on was gone, Malekith was shocked, and the sword in his hand was all messed up. Frigga found the opportunity to inflict several wounds in succession. Mother! At this time, Thor's roar came from outside the door again. Malekith knew that his plan had failed completely, so he used dark magic and turned into a black mist and rushed out of the window. At this time, Thor arrived belatedly and flew in with a hammer. Mother, Jane, are you okay? It's okay, thanks to Mr. Sun, otherwise it would have been really bad. Frigga said happily. Without Sun Wuming, she really wouldn't have been able to deal with the cursed warrior and Malekith for long. Wuming, thank you. Thor was like a child, with tears in his eyes. He couldn't imagine how painful he would be after losing his mother. It's easy with a little effort, you'd better deal with the outside matters first. Sun Wuming waved his hand indifferently. He had the ability to leave the spicy chicken shreds, but he did not do so. He has to rely on him to take out the TIE particles in Jane's body. If he is captured, Malekith will probably die even if he is captured. If the plan failed, Malekith would not stay any longer and quickly return to the spacecraft, ordering everyone to retreat. There were only so many single seedlings left among the Dark Elves, and he would feel distressed for a long time if one of them died. The unrest in Asgard was quickly stopped. When Odin knew everything, he found Tony and Sun Wuming and thanked them deeply. Thor escorted Loki to the main hall and started punching and kicking him in front of everyone. This time he really hit him to death. While beating him, he shouted angrily, "Do you know that you almost killed your mother? I don't want to either. I don't know their purpose. I just want to make Odin sad. He is your father." "No, he is not." Finally, after Frigga's dissuasion, Thor stopped. At the moment, Loki's face was covered with blood. Looking at the gentle woman standing in front of him, Luigi was a little at a loss. "Mother, I didn't want to kill you, I just..." Even though his feelings for Odin are very complicated, Loki only has deep love in his heart for Frigga, who has treated him as his own since childhood and even cared for her even more. Frigga stroked Loki's cheek. "I know, child, but if you make a mistake, you must be punished. Go back to prison and reflect. I will visit you often." "Wait a moment." Sun Wuming suddenly spoke, attracting everyone's attention. "I don't think Loki can go back yet." A flash of fear flashed in Loki's eyes. What did this guy 813 want to do? He wasn't going to kill him. "What do you have in mind, Wuming?" Odin asked in a deep voice. "The TIE particles are still in Jane's body, and we have to rely on Malekith to get them out." Sun Wuming pointed at Loki. "He is the only one who is best at this kind of conspiracy." "I don't believe him." Thor immediately said with disgust, "Loki can only lie to people and can't do any good at all." Loki's reaction was very fierce. "I only like to lie to you. I promised, Queen Mother, I will avenge you." Loki endured the pain and stood up. Without even thinking about it, there was a series of conspiracies. Everyone nodded. "As expected of you, the god of deceit, full of bad intentions." Tony even raised his hand. "Mr. God King, I think Loki must be strictly monitored, otherwise he will definitely cause greater trouble." "I'll give it serious consideration, Mr. Stark." "You." Hearing the two men's sarcasm, Loki glared at Tony bitterly, and Tony pointed at Jean-Li behind him without showing any signs of weakness. "Okay, just do as Loki said." Sun Wuming finalized and looked at Odin again. "Do you agree? If it were just the two of them, I would not approve of such a radical approach for so long." Odin whispered, "But if it is your decision, I choose to agree. Tomorrow I will close the Bifrost. Thor, take that woman with you." Thor was overjoyed and beat his chest loudly, promising to complete the task. Just when a few people were about to leave the palace and go back to make preparations, Ding suddenly said, "Wuming, the agreement you made with me will be made after you get the gem back." 11. Sun Wuming was startled and looked back at Odin, full of confusion. "Don't be surprised. If I delay it any longer, I might not be able to fulfill the promised ability. It's enough for now." A trace of nostalgia flashed in Odin's cloudy eyes as he looked at his palace. "Go, I will wait for your return, in the name of God King Odin." Sun Wuming took a deep look at the old man, turned around and left, leaving the others dumbfounded. In the end, only Frigga and Odin were left. Frigga asked worriedly, "Your Majesty, what exactly did you agree with Mr. Sun?" Odin slowly straightened his back. His eyes were no longer as tired as before, and they were shining with divine light. He held the eternal spear tightly and spoke every word. The end of the God King. Episode 108. There is no problem that cannot be solved with one shot of turtle sect qigong. If there is, try another shot. Blue star. The appearance of TIE particles is not accidental. The upcoming spectacle of 9 stars in a row is the culprit of this phenomenon. Boar's seal was also loosened because of the folding of the 9 realms caused by the continuation of 9 stars. Evil images have appeared these days. There have been many bizarre disappearances in Western Europe. Many people disappeared out of thin air while walking on the streets, causing great panic. Even because of this, SHIELD's Insight plan has been temporarily put on hold. Pierce didn't want his aerospace carrier to disappear inexplicably as soon as it was launched into the sky, because other satellites had already encountered such an unfortunate thing. So far, those scientists have not come to any conclusion. But it was this pause that gave Captain America the opportunity to react and investigate. After meeting Nick Fury, Captain America became suspicious of S.H.I.E.L.D. He usually didn't think about it in detail, but after observing it in the past few days, he found a lot of things that were wrong. With his authority equivalent to that of an 8th-level agent, he couldn't even view the mission files of many newcomers. Even if it is found, the mission record above is not complete. It is obvious that not all people are in S.H.I.E.L.D. The action report still states that they are on standby. This makes the captain more and more certain that S.H.I.E.L.D. must be hiding a big secret. Washington. Inside one of Nick Fury's safe houses. After being the director for so many years, Nick Fury has no other hobby except embezzling public funds from S.H.I.E.L.D. and building safe houses for himself. In Washington alone, there are more than a dozen of them under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s noses, and today they finally came into use. In the small room, the people Nick Fury currently trusts the most gathered. Captain America, Phil Coulson, and Black Widow. As for Hawkeye, he was sent to Eastern Europe by S.H.I.E.L.D. Originally, there was supposed to be another Hill, but after he resigned, Hill successfully became the new S.H.I.E.L.D. director, and the suspicious Nick Fury even suspected her. After listening to Captain America talk about what he had seen and heard in the past few days, several people present were all veteran agents and made a judgment in an instant. Nick Fury's face was so gloomy that he could shed tears. The authorities are obsessed, but bystanders are clear. Sitting in the position of director, he lost himself and thought everything was under control. On the contrary, after being fired, he discovered all kinds of strange signs of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now that the captain had finished speaking, his suspicions were confirmed. To be able to keep him in the dark for more than 10 years, this person's authority must be at least equal to his, or even higher than his. As for those who meet the requirements, looking at the entire S.H.I.E.L.D., there is only one. Pierce. Black Widow gently said the name for Nick Fury. Phil Coulson's brows furrowed. He also guessed it, but didn't dare to say it. Captain, do you know about the Insight Project? Nick Fury suddenly asked. Captain America hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sidwell told me, but I objected. Nick Fury stared at him with one eye, full of oppression. Why would Sitwell tell you? Captain, you seem to be very close to Rumlow and Sitwell recently. Rouet, are you eating? Captain America said dissatisfied. Not only Fury, but also Black Widow and Phil Coulson's expressions became strange. Who doesn't know that Sitwell and Rumlow are direct descendants of Pierce, and they go to the minister's office every now and then? No, I'm doubting anyone. Nick Fury looked at Black Widow, Phil Coulson, and others. I'm even doubting myself, whether this world is real. I don't know the reason. Captain America said irritably, ever since the Battle of New York, Rumlow and Sitwell have often chatted with me, and their enthusiasm is completely different from before. Fury, now is not the time to be suspicious. We must find out what the problem with S.H.I.E.L.D. is, before we can make a judgment. I know. Nick Fury touched his eye patch. Natasha Romanoff, Captain, you two have the most special identities. I need you to go to New York to find Stark to help hack into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s internal network. As for Phil Coulson, you stay normal, contact these people, and don't do the rest. Nick Fury compiled a list and gave it to Phil Coulson. These were the people he believed were less likely to have problems. The captain and others all nodded, and the guests started to act on their own after leaving the house. With their status as Avengers, Captain America and Black Widow left Washington for New York without any suspicion. Arriving at the Stark building, the two received depressing news from Banner. You're looking for Tony? He left with Wuming a few days ago. Seeing the anxious expressions of the two people, Banner asked with concern, what happened? Captain America and Natasha Romanoff looked at each other, and finally Natasha Romanoff said, Banner, do you have the authority to control JARVIS? Well, this is true, but it depends on the level of the matter. Some small things will definitely be fine. Banner scratched his head and said. What about invading SHIELD? Huh? 5 minutes later, after Banner learned about the matter, he was a little shocked that Nick Fury was unreliable and that the department he had been in charge of for so long had so many tricks. But he still agreed to their request. JARVIS, can you help me hack into SHIELD? The mechanical voice of JARVIS came, the level of the incident is being measured. Level 4 authority is required. The initiator, Bruce Banner, has level 6 authority. The operation passed. After finishing speaking, a row of garbled characters appeared on the big screen. It seemed that it would take some time. Captain America couldn't help but ask curiously, Banner, how is the level of this event determined? I'm not sure about Tony's classification. What is level 4? Is it very dangerous? No. Banner shook his head. Usually when I use JARVIS to order takeout, it's level 3. Level 4 is even higher, but it's not much higher. Captain America, Black Widow, the two no longer wanted to talk. About 10 minutes passed. After Tony's strengthening and some information provided by Sun Wuming, JARVIS's ability has greatly exceeded the level during the Battle of New York, and it successfully invaded the core archives of SHIELD without attracting any attention. Natasha Romanoff worked for a while, targeting all orders issued through Pierce. There were no problems at first and they were in full compliance with the rules and regulations, but later on, Captain America's expression changed. On the information, there are clearly icons and slogans that he is extremely familiar with. Hail Hydra, Asgard. One day after the Dark Elf invasion, Odin shut down Bifrost, prohibiting all personnel from leaving Asgard. Thor took Tony, Loki, and Jane through the secret space passage and took a spaceship to Svartalfheim, the country of the Dark Elves. Another day passed, Jane's body became weaker and weaker, and she was sleeping all the time on the spacecraft. After seeing this situation, Thor's eyes were full of worry. Hey. Tony poked him, is your brother really reliable? Aren't you afraid that he will betray you again? Loki's forehead was pounding as he closed his eyes and meditated in the bow of the boat. Thor glanced at his younger brother and said nonchalantly, what are you afraid of? If Loki dares to cause trouble again, Wuming will come over and kill him soon. Both the father and mother agreed. Loki finally couldn't help it anymore and looked back at Thor angrily. Are you still my brother? You actually want him to kill me? You are adopted. Technically, I am the only son of the Odin family. Thor kindly reminded me. Puff. Loki fell to the ground, unable to get up again. The spaceship sailed into the territory of Svartalfheim, which was different from Asgard where the sun was shining all year round and it was like spring all year round. The sky in Svartalfheim was dark, but there was a glimmer of light, letting people know it was daytime. There are no living creatures on the desolate next door. There is only a large whirlpool, connecting the sky and the earth at the farthest point as far as the eye can see. The arrival of the four people quickly attracted the attention of the Dark Elves, and Malekith came over with a group of men. After seeing that there was no such powerful mortal, Malekith's expression remained unchanged and he felt relieved. Malekiths. Take out the TIE particles from the body. Otherwise I will kill your people. Thor roared angrily, and Tony cooperated very well, pointing various weapons at the Dark Elves. But before Malekith could say anything harsh, Loki suddenly took out a dagger and stabbed it into Thor's waist. Tony on the side was shocked and immediately pointed the gun at Loki. The dagger flew over and hit the arc reactor on the chest, and the steel armor was instantly extinguished. A series of changes occurred, which directly affected Malekith's group of Dark Elves who were not very smart. What's going on? Are these people here to stage internal strife? I am Loki, the Prince of Jotunheim. Dark Elf, I have no other requirements. I just want to sit on the throne and see Asgard burning. As Loki spoke, he threw Jane roughly over and raised his hands to show that he meant no harm. Malekith couldn't figure out for a moment whether this was a trap or real. Fortunately, at this time a Dark Elf whispered, He is a prisoner of Asgard. Lord Cursed Warrior, and I saw that he was locked up inside. Malekith was still dubious, but when he saw Thor trying to summon Mjolnir, Loki cut off his arm with a knife. Finally believed it. You will see what you want, Jotunheimer. The captured Jane's body floated into the air, and under Malekith's control, the red strange substance slowly flew out of her body. Malekith's heart also became excited. As long as he obtained TIE particles, and with the help of the space overlap caused by the 9 stars, he could plunge the 9 worlds into darkness forever. Tony. Now. Jane fell to the ground weakly, and Thor yelled. The extinguished steel armor lit up again, and Tony held a strange fragment in his hand. When the fragment appeared, TIE particles immediately abandoned Malekith and rushed towards the fragment in Tony's hand. Thor lifted the illusion, and Mjolnir flew into his hand, smashing him in the face. The powerful thunder instantly killed the Dark Elf surrounding Jane. Loki threw Jane into Thor's arms with a forceful shake. At this time, how could Malekith not know that he was being tricked? The fragment in Tony's hand is the result of last night. He extracted some fragments from the body. And in order to maintain its own integrity, TIE particles will definitely flock to Tony. Kill them. Malekith roared angrily, and the Dark Elves beside him picked up weapons and rushed forward. Wuming. Help. Tony was a little frightened. Those TIE particles gathered together, and the energy fluctuations produced had already made the armor's monitoring system explode. What are you shouting for? It's here. A lazy voice came from the air. I don't know when. Sun Wuming appeared there, hands clasped at his waist. Boom. The turtle Qigong shot out and drew a graceful arc in the air, enveloping all the Dark Elves. The earth shook violently, shattering countless boulders. When the light dissipated, all the Dark Elves disappeared. Only Malekith held up a cloud of black mist and barely survived. One of his arms was gone, and the only one he had left was stretched out towards Tony. The dark red fluid automatically turned into a sharp spear and shot towards Sun Wuming in the air. There is nothing that cannot be solved with one shot of turtle-style Qigong. If there is, then try it again. Sun Wuming showed no emotion. He had already beaten the reality gem controlled by Thanos, not to mention the superficial application of Malekith. The blue light bullet was released from the hand again, thicker than the previous one, and the spear transformed from TIE particles was blasted into fragments all over the sky. No. In the roar of despair, Malekith could no longer stop him and followed in the footsteps of the other dark elves. How did this kind of strength push Bull into a desperate situation in the first place? Sun Wuming frowned, a little confused. After all, Bor is Odin's father, so his experience is not much different. Is someone like Malekith worthy of being his opponent? Looking at the TIE particles scattered in the sky, Sun Wuming slowly brought his hands together in front of his chest. Under the pressure of chi, the TIE particles were also gathering. But it seemed to have its own consciousness, desperately resisting Sun Wuming's control. I'm giving you face. A fierce light flashed in Sun Wuming's eyes, and he increased his intensity. No matter how unwilling he was, the uncontrolled TIE particles could not compete with Sun Wuming's power. They slowly condensed into a dark red gem, and finally floated quietly in the palm of his hand. After doing all this, he said to the three people, Episode 109, Thor, it would be nice if Loki was my sister, Odin's last words, Asgard. Sun Wuming temporarily lent the reality gem to Thor to display as a trophy. When the four people appeared in Asgard, Thor held up TIE particles, and the people of Asgard burst into cheers, shouting Thor's name loudly. Yesterday the Dark Elves invaded, and today Thor completely defeated the enemy. Different from the past, Thor today is fighting to protect Asgard, not acting recklessly for personal honor. Such actions have greatly won the hearts of the people. Counting the last invasion of giants of Jotunheim, Thor has saved Asgard twice in a short period of time, and he is becoming more and more like a king. Seeing this scene, Luigi let out a sour click. Suddenly, a big hand hooked his shoulder. Thor waved to the people with a smile on his face, and whispered to Loki at the same time, no matter what mistakes you made before, but you did a good job this time, I will plead with my father and mother. No, I just wanted to take revenge on the Dark Elves for not letting me out. Loki turned away with a cold snort. Tisk, Loki, I wish you were a sister. What the hell, Thor, what do you want to do? Loki's expression turned frightened. No, I'm just sighing. Thor shrugged, imagining Loki becoming a girl in his mind. In that case, no matter what mistakes the other party makes, he will forgive them, right? The group of people came to the palace gate, surrounded by everyone. Heimdall was holding a giant sword and always smiled. He looked at Thor approaching and also smiled. Thor, Mr. Sun, Mr. Stark, His Majesty the God King is waiting for your triumph, go ahead. Heimdall's eyes stayed on Sun Wuming for a few seconds longer. Sensing his strangeness, Sun Wuming smiled. He probably knew something from the Asgard veteran, but he didn't say much. Thor, you are my pride, and Loki, you are equally good this time. On the throne, Odin's remaining single eye exudes brilliant light. Different from the old man he met last time, Odin now looks like an energetic old man. Thor thought that Odin knew the news of their victory. He was in a good mood and even felt better physically, and he happily accepted his praise. 147. In Sun Wuming's eyes, the increasingly powerful Odin power in Odin's body was as dazzling as huge amounts of fixed star. Odin's death is not just a matter of lifespan. The lifespan of Asgardians is not just thousands of years. The previous god King Bor lived for 60,000 years before entering Sol Castle. But Odin is different. His divine power is too huge, and his physical body has lost the power to support this divine power. The time came at night. To celebrate the end of the crisis, Asgard held a grand dinner. Inside the palace, there are the backbone of Asgard. Outside, the broad square belongs to the common people, and all kinds of delicacies, fruits, wines, and fine wines are open to the public. Even a guilty person like Loki showed up at the dinner and was not immediately imprisoned. Sun Wuming drank cup after cup of fruit wine. Asgard's spiritual fruits are all natural and pollution-free, and they taste pretty good. Even though he doesn't like drinking, he has already drank 2 bottles. Surrounding him were the 3 warriors of Asgard and Thor. At the moment, Thor was bragging about his glorious deeds in pacifying the 9 realms. At that time, there was a stone man who dared to ask me to put down the hammer in my hand. Everyone knows that I, Thor, can live without a wife or a brother, but I just don't have a hammer. Can I endure this? Definitely not. You must know that Tony also said similar words to me back then, and I gave him a severe lesson. Sun Wuming suddenly interrupted, why did I hear Tony say that you used it as a power bank for him? Thor's expression immediately became embarrassed, and Asgard on the side worked hard. Wuming. This is not the point. The point is that the stone man was beaten into lime by me with a hammer, and the others immediately surrendered. Thor tried to restore his image, but the effect was not good. When Sun Wuming took a look, Tony's seat next to him was long gone. He probably went outside to hook up with the girl again. As soon as this guy came to Asgard, he let himself go and became the playboy he used to be. The distance was far, and everyone didn't know each other very well. After looking at each other and exchanging words, no one knew each other after dawn. I have to say that the goddess of Asgard is still very enthusiastic. The small note Sun Wuming has received these days can open a toy store. The atmosphere of the dinner was harmonious, and everyone had a smile on their face, except for 2 or 3 people who were a bit out of place. Frigga forced herself to laugh, her past grace and splendor had all disappeared, and she was enveloped in melancholy. Odin just looked at Thor and Loki quietly without saying a word. As for Loki, he was thinking about what Sun Wuming said in Svartalfheim. Sending the God King off on his last journey. Thor didn't pay too much attention to it, but he took it to heart. Sun Wuming definitely didn't mean to say goodbye, he must have deep meaning. After he saw Frigga's anomaly, he was even more sure of his idea. Could it be? Loki looked up at the old man on the throne, who he both loved and hated. It was late at night and the dinner was finally coming to an end. Thor was a little drunk and said goodbye to Odin, but was left behind. Loki, Thor, and Wu Ming, please stay here for a while. In the main hall, apart from Odin's family, Sun Wuming was the only outsider. Thor, tomorrow I will hold an abdication ceremony and pass the throne to you. From now on, you will be the king of Asgard. In the future, don't act as recklessly as before, and listen more to the opinions of your subjects and the queen. Do you understand? Odin spoke, which caused Thor to lose most of his drunkenness. He quickly refused and said, Father, I no longer have any attachment to the throne. You will always be the king of Asgard. My child, people will grow old or even die. You have no choice. Odin calmly interrupted Thor's next words. Loki frowned and clenched his fists bitterly. Old man, you are still so partial. Loki, Odin suddenly called his name. Loki looked up, his eyes full of unwillingness and resentment. Even though you are adopted, in my heart, you are still my child, no different from Thor. Odin showed his true feelings, but Loki's expression did not change. I once said that you and Thor both have the qualifications to be kings, and this is not false. Odin's eternal spear shone brightly and shot into Loki's body. I declare in the name of Asgard the King of God, Lord of the 9 realms, that Loki Odin will rule Jotunheim and will not be governed by Asgard. As soon as he finished speaking, Loki felt something more in his body. Even in Asgard, he could vaguely perceive the situation in Jotunheim. The Lord of the 9 realms is not Odin's self-proclaimed title, but is recognized by his former opponents who were defeated by him. This title is not a false title, it is a right and even more a responsibility. Now that the king of giants of Jotunheim is dead and a new king has not yet been established, there is no problem in canonizing Loki in his capacity. Loki was suddenly stunned, not knowing how to express his feelings. He keeps making troubles. In addition to satisfying his own desires, he also wants to prove to Odin that he is more qualified to be the king than Thor. Now what Odin did made him realize his wish, but at the same time he felt confused. What should he do, continue to compete with Thor and conquer Asgard completely? Does that really make sense? Odin didn't have time to enlighten his youngest son's complicated thoughts. He had to explain everything properly, and he immediately threw out another clue. Thor, in fact, you have a sister. One big event after another made Thor confused. Loki looked at him strangely and whispered, Only son? Shut up. You adopted one. Thor growled, looking at Odin with puzzled eyes. Father, when did I have a sister? Why didn't you tell me before? Odin lowered his head lonely, she made some mistakes back then, and more mistakes were made on me, so I will seal them. Odin slowly told about his relationship with Hela, and Thor opened his mouth. It turns out that he had heard since childhood that his Valkyrie was so destroyed, and that the eldest sister he had never met was so cruel. Loki was also frightened. His feelings are all trivial, there are werewolves in Asgard. After my death, Hela will break the seal and return to Asgard. She will definitely take revenge. Frigga can rely on divine power to temporarily suppress her for 3 months. After 3 months, Wu Ming, I'll leave everything to you. Odin looked solemnly at Sun Wuming, who observed the arrival of Ragnarok in Odin's sleep, and one of the murderers was Hela. Loki can only play some tricks, and Thor has not even completely awakened his own Thor power. They are no match for Hela at all. What's more, as long as he stands on the land of Asgard, Hela's power can be greatly enhanced, and the only one he can rely on is Sun Wuming. In fact, Odin wanted to hold on for a few more years, but last time he took a photo with Sun Wuming in the star realm because of infinite gems, he could feel that Sun Wuming had a power in his body that made him feel palpitated. Odin knew that the time had come. Dragging such a heavy body to live is just a kind of torture for him, and it is better to die vigorously. Sun Wuming, who had been silent all this time, nodded slightly. Since I promised you, I will definitely do it. Odin smiled with satisfaction. Okay, Thor, Loki, go get ready. Tomorrow is the day when you will become kings. You must not lose your majesty. After the ceremony ends tomorrow, I will have a battle with Wuming. What? Thor was shocked. Father, your body. Shut up. I am Odin of Asgard. I will never be afraid of fighting at any time, let alone death. Odin stared with one eye, and the majesty of the God King burst out. Thor and Loki couldn't help but retreat. Wuming, do you have the destroyer armor in your hands? Sun Wuming was a little embarrassed. Most of his armor was melted by Tony. Did Odin want to take it back? Seeing his embarrassment, Odin said, just give me the core. As long as the core exists, there is still some URU metal in the God King's treasury. That's good. Sun Wuming breathed a sigh of relief, opened the dimensional space, and handed the half-broken destroyer core to Odin. After looking at it for a moment, Odin nodded. The damage is not serious, it can be repaired in one day. Wuming. Wuming. After walking out of the God King's hall, Thor quickly caught up with Sun Wuming in front of him and asked urgently, is this the condition you negotiated with your father? That's right. Sun Wuming nodded. When I first came to Asgard, I had an agreement with the God King. It's just that I didn't expect this day to come so quickly. Originally, Sun Wuming thought Odin would drag him until he could no longer hold on, which was the time in Thor, Ragnarok in the original book. I didn't expect it would be several years in advance. Sun Wuming also had to admire Odin's courage and chose to give up early. But why? Why do you want to fight my father? Thor asked in confusion. Do you have any grudge against him? If you have any dissatisfaction with Asgard, come to me. Thor. Sun Wuming patted the silly big man on the shoulder helplessly. Sometimes fighting is a very simple thing. I long to fight with strong people. It just so happens that your father is one of the top strong people in the universe. Do you want a generation of God Kings to die in their old age, or to die vigorously in battle? This is Odin's choice, and I hope you can respect and understand him. After Sun Wuming finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to Thor, who was stunned in the same place, and returned to the residence arranged by Odin for him to adjust his condition. He had a hunch that tomorrow's battle would be the toughest battle he had experienced so far. Even Thanos, who holds 5 gems, will not be more difficult to deal with than Li Ding. What's more, the other party also asked for the destroyer armor back, which showed that the other party was ready to go all out. Facing Odin like this, Sun Wuming was full of expectations. Just like that, the night passed quietly. Light dispels the darkness and returns to Asgard. A new day has arrived. Episode 110, Sun Wuming's Odin, an unprecedented battle. 9 Realms live broadcast. Early morning. Asgard. The people who had just experienced the carnival last night gathered outside the door of the God King's hall again. Thor and Loki both put on their most luxurious armors, supported Frigga, and ascended to the position of Queen of Heaven. Even Tony ran out of the girls' room. He covered his waist and approached Sun Wuming, with a strange expression on his face. What did I miss last night? Odin is actually going to abdicate. Is this true? Is it because of you? Sun Wuming glanced at him sideways, and continued to close his eyes to rest and adjust his state. Feeling the pressure coming from him, Tony even hid in his armor. I was puzzled. Why are these two so weird? Looking at this, he thought Sun Wuming was going to fight with someone. Finally, the golden door slowly opened. First there was a shadow, and then Odin came out dressed in divine clothing, holding the eternal spear, Gangnir. He changed his usual approachable image, his face was glowing and he was in high spirits. Obviously, Odin has completely let go of his suppression of Odin's power. Now he is the most powerful moment in history. Even though they did not deliberately release the aura of divine power, the people of Asgard still felt a sense of chest tightness. Not only were they not afraid or panicked, but they were full of excitement, beating their chests loudly and shouting in unison. See His Majesty the God King. Many old people had tears in their eyes, as if they were recalling the time when Odin led them to conquer the 9 realms, a time when an eternal spear swept away all the great powers. Even Thor and Loki, the 2 brothers, had never seen their father in such a posture, and at this moment they realized it. What is the majesty of the God King? Accepting the respect of everyone, Odin sat firmly on the throne of the God King for the last time. He looked at the sky of Asgard and the vegetation of Asgard. He was extremely familiar with all of this. Odin was born from the Aesir clan. During the time of his father Bor, Asgard was powerful, but it did not conquer the 9 realms. At that time, although Bor also had the title of the Father of God, it was just to put money on his face and only referred to the Aesir clan. The true glory of the Aesir clan was established step by step when Odin ascended the throne 6,000 years ago and led his daughter Hela. Clang! The spear of eternity tapped the ground, and the crisp buzz extinguished all sounds. I, King of Asgard, the father of god Odin Bolson, who has gone through countless battles, defeated the Vanir Protoss, killed Surti, and conquered Jotunheim, I declare here. The sound echoed in Asgard, and with the blessing of divine power, it penetrated the world and resounded throughout the 9 realms. At the moment, it is a special period of 9 stars in a row, the space barrier is extremely fragile, and parts of the 9 worlds have begun to merge. Odin's voice transcended the limitations of time and space and spread throughout the 9 realms almost at the same instant. Nidawi, the dwarf king Atri, who was forging weapons, stopped his work and bowed his head slightly in the direction of Asgard to show respect for the king of God. Vanaheim, the Vanna Protoss, with laurel leaves on their heads, lowered their bodies, the god king. In Alfheim, the playful light elves blinked their big eyes, spreading thousands of rays of light, forming a beautiful rainbow, and listened to the will of the god king. Jotunheim, giants of Jotunheim had eyes full of hatred. Svartalfheim, Muspelheim. Hail Hades, this is an extremely special existence among the 9 realms. Hail Hades used to be the underworld among the 9 realms, but when Odin sealed a person here, Hair Hades lost its function as the underworld. All the strength was used to suppress the woman. Hela raised her head angrily after hearing the sound. Odin. There is no distinction between day and night in Hela's Hades. Hela is trapped in this dark place and can't figure out the passage of time. She can only feel that some time ago, the power that restrained her was gradually getting stronger, and even movement became a problem. Now hearing Odin's voice, she knew something big was going to happen. Use your divine power to your heart's content. The more you use it, the closer death will be to you. Blue Star. Odin's voice also rings in everyone's ears. After experiencing the Battle of New York, people are very familiar with Thor, so naturally the name Odin is no stranger to him. This strange phenomenon has occurred, and the whole world is discussing whether the recent disappearances are related to Odin. Sir, do you need to strengthen the barrier? London to Holy Place, a magician lowered his head and asked the Ancient One, who was looking at the sky. No need, the Blue Star people have already experienced too many strange things, let's let them give the God King a ride together. The Ancient One was so disappointed that Odin walked in front of her. It was so unpredictable. At the moment, all creatures in the 9 realms are waiting for Odin's next words. And Odin finally issued his last series of memories as the God King. From now on, Thor Odinson will become the new king of Asgard. He will continue to carry the mission of the Aesir clan to protect the peace of the 9 realms. Thor knelt on one knee, put his right hand on his chest, and Odin gently placed the crown on his head. My child, the future is yours. Father. Thor said with tears in his eyes, I will definitely protect Asgard and not let you down. After Thor retreated, Odin said again, I declare. Mr. Sun Wuming, the strong man from Midgard, will always be Asgard's most noble friend, and the sacred covenant will be concluded forever. Once he questions Thor's order, even the king must be cautious. Wow. The people in the square looked at Odin in shock, and Sun Wuming was also shocked. They didn't understand why Odin would issue such an outrageous order. Doesn't this mean that Sun Wuming has become the uncrowned king of Asgard? Even if the other party helped Asgard twice, it shouldn't be done. Isn't His Majesty Odin afraid of Sun Wuming's intentions in the future? Your Majesty the God King, this is not one of the conditions we agreed upon before, right? Before anyone else could raise objections, Sun Wuming, the client, had already expressed his dissatisfaction. Isn't it obvious that they want to tie him to the broken ship of Asgard? He doesn't even want to care about Blue Star, let alone Asgard. There is no such thing as a God King now. I am just an ordinary Asgard old man. Odin walked down from the throne with a smile and came to Sun Wuming, this is an old man's request. Aren't you ready to agree? I'm sorry, I don't have any morals. You can't kidnap me. Sun Wuming shook his head and refused to accept this idea at all. I can't possibly agree. 3 times, you only need to help Thor 3 times. You can take away Asgard's technology, treasures, and even the glove. Odin lowered his voice, with a rare hint of pleading in his tone. If Sun Wuming doesn't help, Thor doesn't know how much hardship he will have to endure before he can truly grow up. Odin really can't bear to see his people suffer. Okay, but dealing with Hela counts as one. Seeing that Odin had done this, Sun Wuming thought about it and agreed. Odin finally smiled, and then his expression became serious. Then, let me fulfill the final agreement. The destroyer quickly approached the treasure house from a distance and landed beside Odin. Everyone was a little confused and thought there was another foreign invasion. Thor quickly said, Father wants to discuss with Wuming. This is a communication between strong men. There is no need to lie. With a tap of the eternal spear, It tore apart the space at will and connected to the unknown void. Odin took the lead and walked in with the destroyer. Sun Wuming followed closely behind. Tony was a little confused. Thor, what on earth is going on? Thor looked at Odin's back with a complicated expression. His eyes were slightly red. This is my father's choice. He is a real king and a real warrior. Not only him, but Loki and Frigga also knew what Odin's departure meant, and they felt sad in their hearts. Frigga held back to make her voice calmer. Thor, give the order and do what you should do. Yes, Queen Mother. Thor took a deep breath and held up Mjolnir. My command. In the name of Thor, Thor. Shut down Bifrost and put Asgard on full alert. The other side. Odin took Sun Wuming to a deserted galaxy in an unknown corner of the universe. The planet beneath their feet showed no sign of life, and the surrounding void was dim. Sun Wuming was the first one after arriving, and cast a spell to cover himself, which made Odin a little surprised. With your strength, you actually need to rely on magic to move around in space? Sun Wuming nodded calmly. This is indeed a disadvantage of my race, but the same goes for spells, which are all my strength. Odin smiled and asked no more questions. He had already noticed at a glance that Sun Wuming was not a human being. How could a normal Midgardian have such a powerful body and strength, not even a mutated one? Please give me flowers. His gaze is directed towards the starry sky, containing memories and remembrance. Do you know where this place is? Sun Wuming shook his head. The bottom of the world tree was originally a prosperous galaxy. After I became the God Queen, I set my sights on this place during my first expedition. You have also seen that the once prosperous reputation was destroyed. The army went out and brought only conquest, killing, and fragments of the broken planet around it. This is my great military exploits. Odin laughed at himself. The saddest thing is that it wasn't until thousands of years later that I understood this truth. I wanted to make up for it, but I couldn't do anything. Sun Wuming remained calm and said calmly, this is normal. You who claim to be gods don't care about the feelings of ordinary people. Your so-called sudden awakening is just an ambition that has been flattened by old age. Perhaps there is also a blow from the celestial group? Odin's pupils suddenly shrank and he stared at Sun Wuming closely. Do you know them? Of course, isn't the destroyer armor made for this purpose? Odin lowered his head. Then are you still planning to collect infinite gems? I only collected 5 of them and attracted them. Come on, even if I don't collect gems, Blue Star will attract their attention. Sun Wuming remembered that it seemed that Blue Star was nurturing a newborn celestial group, but when he destroyed the future Blue Star, he did not notice anything unusual and did not know what was going on. In that case, let me try your power. Odin took a deep look at Sun Wuming and said, if you can't even pass my level, you'd better give up on collecting. 0, 0. The 9 realms are 1. If Sun Wuming recruits the celestial god group, Asgard will also be affected. Destruction repaired overnight. The armor turned into fluid and covered Odin's body, gradually shapeshifting into a real armor instead of the previous robot appearance. The full coverage peeping envelopes Odin's face and blends it with his whole body. The moment the battle armor took shape, a domineering aura unique to the God King swept out. Boom. The reason why a battle armor is that it must rely on its owner to exert its due fighting power. The armor Sun Wuming fought against before was nothing more than an empty shell. Now, he shows why Odin is confident that he can use this power to fight against the gods. At the same time, the destroyer armor is also a comfort, helping Odin stabilize the divine power in his body. Otherwise, if he uses all his strength, he may disintegrate on his own and return to the Soul Castle soon. Got it. A terrifying storm was brewing on the planet. Odin's magical power escaped a little green appeared on this long-dead land. Sun Wuming raised his fists and waited solemnly. Finally, Odin took action. The eternal spear pressed down slightly, the wind stopped, the thunder stopped, and in outer space, the planet fragments that were originally floating in disorder shook together, and actually gathered together on their own, becoming no bigger than the 2 of them. The planet below my feet is much smaller. Odin's majestic voice resounded through the starry sky, and following his orders, huge amounts of planets crashed down towards Sun Wuming. With a radius of thousands of kilometers, there is no escape. There is no way to avoid it. It can only be hardwired. You're a little bit underestimating me, Odin. He actually used such a rough cut to test my combat power. Sun Wuming murmured, although it looks scary, what's the use even if it's big? Isn't it just dross composed of ores and metals? The aura of destruction appeared on Sun Wuming's fist. He just calmly swung forward and hit the air. Click. Click. Fine cracks quickly appeared in the void, and then continued to spread toward the distance. Finally, it shattered. The planet fell from the sky, and the space that was destroyed in this way was broken down into the most basic atomic state and fell into the turbulent flow of the void. Sun Wuming said loudly, "There is no need to test, Odin, show your true strength." Odin narrowed his eyes slightly, and his aura suddenly increased to a new level. He is not really a good-tempered man. When he first conquered the 9 realms, no one dared to talk to him like this. In this case, Sun Wuming, I will save it until the last moment. At this moment, the 9 stars connected into a straight line, and the 9 realms on the world tree were the shortest apart from each other at the moment. Just like the fruits on a tree, they all fell to the ground and were in a flush state. Only Hell, the underworld at the bottom, remained motionless because Odin imposed a seal on it. This battle at the bottom of the world tree has appeared in front of countless people through space projection,